I'm calling to order this hearing. This is a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Thursday, March 30th, 2023. The time is 9:23 in the morning. And this is a hearing on the proposed budgets for two agencies that are under the jurisdiction of the Committee of the Whole, the University of the District of Columbia and the Commission on the Arts and Humanities. This hearing is being conducted in a hybrid fashion. The agency witnesses are present, as am I, in room 412 of the Johnny Wilson building, and the non-government witnesses are participating via the Zoom video conference broadcast platform. This hearing is available live on the Zoom video conference broadcast platform on the chairman's website, which is www.chairmanmendelson.com/live. And it's being recorded and will be available to the public on the council's website, which is www.dccouncil.gov. This is the second of 6 hearings that the Committee of the Whole is having on the mayor's proposed budget for agencies under the purview of the Committee of the Whole. Our next hearing will be on Wednesday, April 5th, where we will hear testimony regarding education agencies. That's DCPS, OSSI, Deputy Mayor for Education, Public Charter School Board, State Board of Education. I realize as I'm saying that the university is an education agency, but they get special treatment. They get today. The hearing on Wednesday, April 5th will be for non-government, that is public witnesses only. And then we will have the agency heads before us on Friday, April 7th. On April 6th, we will have a hearing on the proposed budgets for the Council of the District of Columbia, the district's contribution to the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, the proposed budget for the DC Auditor, the Office of Budget and Planning, the New Columbia State Ed Commission, the DC Retirement Board, and other post-employment benefits agency or fund. So those are hearings. On April 14th, the Committee of the Whole will have a hearing on all of the budget legislation that the mayor has submitted. So that would be not only the Local Funds Budget Act, but the Federal Budget Request Act, the Budget Support Act, and the revised budget for fiscal year 2023. The mayor submitted the proposed budget, her proposed budget, or her budget proposal for fiscal year 2024 on March 22nd. And the council is scheduled to consider and vote on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 on May 16th. I said that with a little hesitation because not all of the bills are going to be voted on May 16th. And there are 2 votes on both the budget and the Budget Support Act. Having said all that, what we're going to do is we're going to hear from the public witnesses regarding the University of the District of Columbia. So if they could all be let in as in the participant room for Zoom. Teresa Aspinwall, who's Executive Director of Multicultural Association of Spanish-Speaking Providers. Sia Barbara Camara, who's with the DC Early Learning Collaborative. Nakila Smith with People for Fairness Coalition. Stan Wall with the Van Ness Main Street. Bill Rice and Kim Bender, who is listed as a member of the Archives Advisory Group. Following their testimony, we will then hear from the president of the university regarding his proposed budget. I believe we've been joined by one council member, Councilmember Fruman. If you have opening remarks. Councilmember Fruman. Don't see him. All right, so let's begin with Ms. Aspinwall. And good morning.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Mendelson and Councilmember Fruin. My name is Teresa Aspinwall, and I'm here today on behalf of the members of the Multicultural Spanish-Speaking Providers Association. I'm here to ask the council to ensure that UDC has a well-funded budget for its infant and toddler education programs. We ask the council to fully fund and protect the budget for the AA in education. Current funding is not enough to cover the true cost of the program. Specifically, we ask the council to increase funding for a dedicated bilingual program liaison at $79,000, supplemental instruction at $50,000, more bilingual professors and faculties at $443,000, and training for early childhood education teaching professionals at $122,000. We're also asking that the council protect last year's increased annual scholarship fund of $850,000 for an additional 2 years. The Higher Education Incentive Program was established for the purpose of increasing the number of early educators teaching in the district. The HEI Act is designed to reduce financial and other barriers to post-secondary pathways for teachers who are employed at OSCE licensed child development programs. According to UDC, the current number of students receiving HEI scholarship funds is 325. UDC anticipates that 200 educators will enroll for the fall 2023 semester. This number could be even larger as it's the last semester before OSCE's new education requirements take effect on December 2nd. Educators who do not yet meet the new credential requirements are aware that center directors may apply for a waiver on their behalf if the staff member is working towards obtaining the required credential. For these reasons, additional funding is needed to support continued program success. DC's only higher educational institution is positioned to create additional pathways to possible. The early childhood program is the largest at the community college. Program administrators have designed an accelerated format to help these educators complete their AA degree in under 2 years. UDC continues to do its part to help the city meet its goal of a highly qualified early educator workforce. The founding class of 21 educators from the bilingual AA program graduated with a 90% retention rate and an average GPA of 3.5, all while being employed full-time. I've shared a video message from the graduates for the record. As I wrap up, I would like to recognize President Mason's commitment to ensuring that applicants have equitable access to UDC pathways. Under his leadership, barriers that immigrant applicants faced were removed, and admissions to UDC was no longer based on immigration status, English language proficiency, or state of domicile. President Mason, your leadership and presence will be missed. I wish you great success in your next role. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Aspinwall. I'm at a disadvantage. I don't have a copy of your statement.
Apologies. Yeah, I sent it this morning and I can resend it again.
Why don't you resend it?
Okay.
Because I want to rely on it to ask some questions of the president. Do you know, Ms. Aspinwall, of the different items that you mentioned with regard to additional funding, what that totals?
Of course not. I'm going to leave that to President Mason, but it looks like it's, yes, I'd have to do the calculator. Apologies.
Okay, thank you. Barbara Camara, you're on mute.
Good morning, Chairman Mendelson and members of the Committee of the Whole, as well as all your staff. I'm Cia Barbara Camara, a longtime Ward 4 resident, the Chief Strategy Officer for the DC Early Learning Collaborative, a member of the DC Association for the Education of Young Children, and a member of the Executive Committee of the Under 3 DC Coalition. These organizations are collectively seeking sustainable funding for the full implementation of the Birth to 3 legislation with fidelity. We thank you for you and your colleagues for your sustained commitment to high-quality early care and education services essential to the sustainability of district families' birth to 12 education continuum and the preparation of the early childhood workforce. This sustainability significantly contributes to the economic vitality of the city's economy. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony during this FY24 budget hearing for the University of the District of Columbia. DCELC is thrilled that you positively responded to our request for an additional $850,000 in the UDC FY23 budget. That additional funding is already reaping benefits, as demonstrated by last Saturday's recognition of the first English-Spanish cohort of 21 persons who attained the associate's degree, with an emphasis in infant and toddler development. We congratulate President Mason, Dean Marilyn Hamilton, and the Multicultural Spanish-Speaking Providers Association for the outstanding recognition program that resulted in a great article in the Washington Post last Sunday. Without your financial support, this would not have happened. For the FY24 budget, we make the following recommendations. The council should maintain the $850,000 in the FY24 budget and continue it. There are more than 400 people in the associate's degree program, about 45 in the bachelor's program, and there's also a waiting list for enrollment. This waiting list is likely to increase as the December 2nd, 2023 deadline for the OSCE credentials approaches. UDC needs flexibility to hire a bilingual coordinator, provide supports to students, and to hire bilingual faculty to reduce the class size and teach general education courses. Council Chairman Mendelson asked the UDC president to provide a budget for the Infant Toddler Faculty Enhancement Institute that we have requested for the last 2 years. We request that these funds be made available. UDC offers the Child Development Associate credential through the Workforce Development Program for 25 students per year, funded through the Department of Employment Services. This $100,000 budget includes books, supplies, transportation, and assistance with child care. The credential is required for teacher assistants and home-based educators by the December 2nd, 2023 deadline. It is imperative that these funds remain available to UDC. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and thanks to the council and the mayor for your support for our state university. I'm available to respond to questions.
Thank you very much. Nikila Smith. I believe she is not here. Stan Wall.
Good morning, Chairman Mendelson and Councilmember Fruman. Thank you for the opportunity to once again testify in support of the University of District Columbia at this budget hearing. I'm Stan Wall here on behalf of Van Ness Main Street, where I'm a member of the organization's Economic Development Committee. I'm also a former ANC 3F commissioner. I head the DC office of a real estate and economic development advisory firm, and I'm a longtime DC resident. UDC is a great partner to our Main Street program in Van Ness, Forest Hills, and Wakefield. We are here again today because UDC is our largest landlord and tenant on the avenue, controlling nearly 44,000 square feet of retail, of which 60% is vacant in Van Ness at 4200, 4225, 4250, and 4340 Connecticut Avenue. All these prominent buildings stand on Connecticut Avenue. As you know, in 2018, UDC signed a letter of intent with Van Ness Main Street to have the empty retail leased by the end of 2020. Despite the pandemic, UDC, in keeping with the letter of intent, hired brokerage firm KLNB and leased some of this space to Mom's Organic Market and All Care. We understand that there are new leases on the horizon as well. However, Mom's and All Care have not opened yet this year, even though they were leased 2 years ago. At the same time, Van Ness Main Street has seen 7 new small businesses open on the corridor throughout the pandemic or on its heels, with others slating to open in the coming weeks, and a letter of intent for the now defunct Burger King site. This demonstrates that our corridor is vibrant and attractive to potential businesses. So why is UDC's retail still vacant? As we stated at the performance hearing last month, UDC is at a severe disadvantage. The 7 new businesses in our corridor have been able to open faster than the 2 at the UDC properties because of concessions to those incoming businesses to assist them with building out their space. We are asking that the council to improve UDC's performance and bottom line by including a capital tenant improvement incentive line item for UDC based on the same analysis presented at last month's performance hearing. Current tenant improvement incentives average in DC is $100 per square foot, and UDC has 25,000 square feet of empty retail. I ran a tax revenue scenario for just 1,000 square feet of retail that demonstrates an annual impact of $54,000 in sales, property, and business taxes to DC if that retail were to be filled. The total opportunity cost on 25,000 square feet of currently empty vacant space is $1.35 million in lost tax revenue to DC every year. This does not take into account the rental income loss of the currently empty properties. If DC were to provide $100 per square foot to UDC to support tenant improvement incentives, or a total of $2.5 million for the 25,000 square feet of empty space, the city would be paid back in less than 2 years, and from that point forward, continue to reap the benefit of this additional new tax revenue. UDC would also directly benefit by generating rental revenue of $1 million per year based on average rents in our corridor of $40 per square foot. The ANC 3F resolution regarding UDC's purchase of 4250 Connecticut, dated February 2018, supported the LOI signed by UDC and Van Ness Main Street and explicitly called on the council to acknowledge this disadvantage by asking the council to help ensure that approval of UDC's purchase would not halt the strides that Van Ness and the ANC 3F community has made over the past few years by providing earmarked operating and capital funds as necessary for UDC to offer prospective retail tenants lease rates, concessions, and tenant improvement allowances and other incentives in the same manner as a for-profit property owner would typically employ to secure desirable tenants. We ask that the council help UDC become a competitive landlord in Connecticut Avenue. UDC has kept up their side of the letter of intent to the best of their ability, and now we need action to allow UDC to fully lease the empty retail on Connecticut Avenue for the benefit of all. According to Alana Preuss, founder of Recast City, that provides technical assistance to urban main streets across the country, one vacant building on the block can reduce the value of nearby properties by 20% or more. This is a losing proposition for DC, UDC, and other commercial businesses on our corridor. Looking across the city, our major universities have made conscious efforts to create more vibrant environments around their campuses to better serve the needs of their students, faculty, and staff. This can be seen by the Whole Foods anchored mixed-use development at GW, the vibrant retail that Catholic University advanced in the Brooklyn Edgewood area, and the tremendous work that Howard University is doing to create vibrant community around its campus. UDC students, faculty, and staff deserve the same access to vibrant retail amenities, and they need the DC Council's assistance and investment to achieve this. Thank you for your time and your serious consideration to solving this longstanding challenge and helping UDC and the surrounding community achieve its maximum potential. I will be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Bill Rice.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good day. I am Bill Rice, and I am testifying for myself as someone who is deeply interested in preserving and disseminating the history of our city. And I'm testifying in connection with the move of the building of the DC archives at the Van Ness campus of UDC. I go back to recalling Phil Ogilvie setting up the DC archives at 1300 Naylor Court Northwest. I am a founding member of the Friends of the DC Archives, and I strongly support the council-created Archives Advisory Group that is bringing needed advice and direction to the planned new archives at UDC. I want to closely associate myself with the testimony that you're about to hear from Kimberly Bender, speaking for the AAG. That, quote, FY24 is a critical year for the construction of the new archives. As she explains, it appears that discussions are now finally underway that will lead to a MOU agreement between UDC and the district's Department of General Services and the Secretary of the District, which includes the archives, to allow construction to finally begin on campus. And I join her in supporting the additional $30 million that Mayor Bowser is requesting in her FY24 budget to account for the inflationary increases in the building costs for the archives. Also, as Ms. Bender explains, it is most important that there be close coordination among all the parties in the actual construction, of course, starting with the MOU. As you, I believe, know, Mr. Mendelson, and hopefully Mr. Fruman, my council member, the archives has been neglected for far too long. Both the building at 1300 Naylor Court Northwest, as well as how the treasures within are cared for. This, fortunately, is starting to change under the very capable leadership of State Archivist Dr. Lopez Matthews. But he desperately needs more staff now to inventory and care for the collection and to prepare for the move into the new building. In my vision, and I think we all share this, the DC Archives must meet the curatorial standards set by our federal neighbors like the Library of Congress and the National Archives and Records Administration. In closing, I encourage you and the UDC leadership to make the DC Archives a new academic center at the university and for the city. This should start by coordinating classes, programs, internships, and degrees with the existing university archives and the Jazz Archives. This will attract students and money and involve a wider variety of academic and general audience. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I am of course available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Kim Bender.
Good morning. I'm Kim Bender. I'm testifying today on behalf of the Archives Advisory Group. Our mandate, as outlined in the fiscal year 2021 Budget Support Act of 2020, is to advise the Council of the District about project AB 102C in the district's capital improvement plan to construct a new archives facility for the District of Columbia. So FY24 is a critical year for the construction of the new archives at UDC. We expect that an MOU will be agreed upon soon, and this year we should see the clearing of the space, the completion of the design, and the groundbreaking. It is a year we anticipate with great excitement. The AAG is pleased that the mayor, in her oral presentation of the budget, has said that she added an additional $30 million to the project's capital budget to cover the known inflation in building costs. Understanding the budget challenges this year, we encourage UDC to think creatively about how the MOU process for this project can improve coordination and planning with the other agencies involved in establishing the new archives. This will help reduce costs and improve return on investment so as to benefit both UDC and the new archives building and the archives. For example, this major capital project involves the reconstruction of large parts of the garage at UDC. Some of this work, such as the reconfiguration of the garage entry, fulfills aspects of the university's 10-year campus plan, which was approved in 2020. However, the project design currently assumes a number of related small projects at UDC will be carried out under separate appropriations. That may be okay. However, there may be opportunities to reduce costs by coordinating this work with the archives project budget. Each individual construction project adds overhead, site staging, and interim leases if space needs to be taken offline. A contractor who is already on site for one project can more efficiently and cost-effectively complete others. This kind of coordination should be addressed in the MOU process. Additionally, the UDC archives and the Jazz archives will be located in this new building. A review of those entities and their needs with a view towards acquiring equipment and staff that they need would be timely, as would the planning for future ways of integrating classes and programs into the new archives. Also, as we've testified elsewhere, the DC Archives and OPR is currently operating well below national standards for state archives. Another easy way to increase return on investment would be for council to support UDC in setting up internships at OPR this year, well ahead of the new archives building being constructed. Students would benefit from working with the material. OPR would be able to do some of the digitization and organizational work that's required to move the archival material and open it to the public. Again, the district cannot wait for the facility to open at UDC to begin delivering benefits to students and to residents in general. Through internship programs like this, we can deliver them earlier and prepare for when adequate funding becomes available. In short, this is the year to make good on the promise of the new DC Archives building and the programs that come with it, and to make our funding count. The District of Columbia is ready to have a public archives for all the people, built with professional standards and staffed with a full complement of professionals. We ask that you budget and support the accomplishment of this vision. Thank you for allowing me to testify, and I'm also happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. So let me, I guess, start with you or Mr. Rice. So you're satisfied with the capital budget as you understand it for the archives?
We understand that the mayor has announced that there'd be an additional $30 million added to the money that's already been appropriated. We don't see it in the actual physical written budget. However, we believe based on her announcement that we assume that is a clerical error and
Okay.
are interested in seeing that in writing.
All right, so we're not positive. That's something we need to look at. And, but in any event, you think that's where we should go, is that additional 30 million?
Yeah, that is about where it seems the building will be.
Have you or others with the advisory group had any conversations with the university with regard to things they could be doing, such as your suggestion about the internship program?
We have not yet met with UDC. As far as I know, I have not. Our group generally has not.
Yeah.
We'd be very open to that.
Perhaps your group, perhaps the advisory group should do that. Let me see if I have any other questions for anyone. No, I think I'm good. Councilmember Fruman, are you here? Do you have any questions?
I am here, and thank you very much, Chairman. I was slow to push my buttons before, so I apologize for that.
Well, as a colleague, colleagues are always willing to push your buttons if that happens.
I should start, Chairman Mendelson, by saying what a great job you did yesterday. That was a really challenging passage, and I'm very proud to be a part of this institution and work with you and Councilmember Allen. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for being there.
Yeah, that was an experience. Just a few questions for the panel. And first, thank you very much for those who testified about the early childhood initiatives. There are so many things that we can build on at UDC in order to strengthen our workforce and better serve our communities. And that's an important one. So thank you very much for your testimony on that. Mr. Wall, we've spoken about this before, just a few questions. I do think, and we've shared this, and I hope that you've shared it with the chairman also, the importance of getting that kind of tenant improvement allowance so that we can fill those spaces, which will be good for the tax base. It'll be good for the university. It'll be good for the nearby community. Some of the numbers that have been talked about at different times have moved around from my perspective. I put my budget letter asking for a certain amount of money for tenant improvement allowance, and now different numbers are being talked about. But as I understood it, you were talking about $1 a square foot as a tenant allowance, a tenant improvement allowance, and that would end up being $2.5 million as a fund.
It's $100 per square foot for that tenant. Yes, yeah.
And what what's the range of allowances that private landlords give? What is that? How does that compare to what you'd see in the private market?
Yeah, that's very much comparable to what's generally given in the private market, and particularly in this kind of retail environment where we're trying to fill these spaces across the entire city. And again, that investment's made with the expectation that over the course of the entire lease, the landlord will recoup that initial investment back in the form of their rents. But essentially trying to attract small local businesses to build out this type of space. It's difficult for those businesses to come up with that initial capital to do that build out. So the landlord's incentive helps them to overcome that hurdle. So we bring active retail into these spaces.
So that's interesting. So in a lease negotiation, is it something like, and I don't want to garble the numbers because I was off by a couple of digits a minute ago, but a landlord would say that they would rent for $40 a square foot without a tenant improvement allowance, but with a tenant improvement allowance, they $42 over the life of the lease. Is that the dynamic of those negotiations?
I would say the $40 includes that $100 allowance. Both of those, again, are typical for our market in terms of that's a typical rent and that's a typical tenant improvement allowance. And again, over the course of the lease, they recoup that, $100 investment, by having that tenant be there for, 5, 10 years or longer in the space.
Okay, so, well, thank you very much for that. I mean, I wonder, you talked about different the taxes that we would get in future years if we did this. And I guess it's too speculative for the CFO to take that into account, that this kind of investment might lead to, significant increased taxes in the out years, which would then have different budget implications. But eventually it would have different budget implications. So, well, thank you for that. And I can assure you this is one of the things that I will be advocating for.
Thank you, council member. If I may, if we don't do this action, it's almost guaranteed that we'll have zero impact going forward. So yes, you can't guarantee that we'll have that exact amount of tax revenue going forward, but doing nothing will guarantee that we won't get anything at all. So this is essentially trying to, create a more positive situation for UDC and for the city going forward.
Really important point. Thank you very much. And for those advocating on the archives issues, I want to be a big supporter of yours. I don't have any questions. I just want to assure you that I and my office are very engaged on this. Want to see input at all levels into how this archives gets shaped. Also want to make sure that the archives is done in a way that the university that works maximally well for the university. I think you both of your testimonies went to that, but this is a great way to further enhance the university, and 100% with you on this. So thank you very much.
We really appreciate your support.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Councilmember Fruin and Chairman Mendelson. If I may, I've had contacts with the university which are no longer seem to apply. If you might ask President Mason who the archives advisory group and others should contact to follow up on your suggestion. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, that covers it for my questions.
Thank you. Give me just a second. I want to thank each of the witnesses for your testimony. You all are excused, and we're going to turn to the president of the university now. Give me a second before you begin. Thank you.
Right.
Why don't you begin?
Thank you, sir. Chairman Mendelson, members of the Committee of the Whole, Raleigh and Evans, staff, good morning. I am Ronald Mason, Jr., President of the University of the District of Columbia, the public institution of higher learning in and for the nation's capital. I am pleased to testify on the university's proposed fiscal year 2024 budget. To assist in explaining our proposed budget, we have prepared a PowerPoint presentation to accompany my written remarks. I start by thanking Mayor Bowser for proposing a budget and financial plan that continues to hold the university steady, particularly in a difficult budget climate. Additionally, I thank you, Chairman Mendelson, and the rest of the council for your ongoing support of the university. We have grown healthier during my tenure due to that support, and I am hopeful that the mayor and council will continue to invest in the university that bears the name of the district through our fiscal year 2024 budget and financial plan. Staying the course. When I came before you last year, I noted that the vision of our Equity Imperative Strategic Plan remained resolute. All students will achieve their highest levels of human potential. UDC's FY 2023 budget worked to achieve this. It focused on strengthening our workforce and talent pathways and supporting our students as we and the district recovered from the pandemic. And as I indicated during our performance oversight testimony in February, the UDC Board of Trustees, in its wisdom, has determined that it is best to build on the progress under our current strategic plan by assessing, updating, and enhancing it, as opposed to creating a new one. Thus, the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget that I will present to you today is about staying the course, while also continuing progress despite this being a difficult budgetary year. Yet, I do want to take a moment to ask you to reflect on your ultimate vision for UDC and the funding that will be needed in order to achieve that vision. If UDC is to be the public institution of higher education in and for the nation's capital, and all that that title implies, then we will need additional supports in this budget. UDC is poised to excel, but the next president will need more resources to continue moving UDC to a place of prominence. Given that our proposed FY 2024 budget looks to stay the course and continue progress, our budget formulation is driven by our overarching focus to be a model of urban student success, a sustainable source of diverse business-ready talent, and the #1 urban land-grant university in the nation. To achieve these goals, we must enhance core functions that support student success, maintain student financial support, prioritize and build high-need workforce pathways, re-engage students lost to the pandemic, transform our facilities to be environments conducive to learning, invest in our faculty and staff, and enhance our core functions to make UDC a first choice. Thus, our 2024 budget request and proposed budget focuses on these areas. As you know, Chairman, UDC has an overall operating budget, which includes a subsidy budget and a capital budget. Our overall budget, which is described as enterprise funding, is comprised of all of our funding, including the subsidy we receive from the district, tuition collected, spendable endowment income, and all federal funding. Our proposed FY 2024 overall budget is $199.8 million, representing a $3.36 million or 1.7% increase from FY 2023. As you can see on the accompanying slide, this increase is primarily attributable to the difference between a 6.9% increase in unrestricted funds and a $3.5 million decrease in restricted funds. The $3.7 million increase in special purpose revenue funds will be used to ensure that students' needs continue to be addressed given that all our federal HERF funds ends at the end of June 2023. Our subsidy budget or local budget is comprised of funds from the district government, and for FY 2024, it continues to include Federal American Rescue Plan Act, that is ARPA funds. In total, our proposed FY 2024 budget, subsidy budget, is $96.97 million, representing a $0.759 million or 0.79% increase from FY 2023. The $96.97 million is comprised of $94.99 million in local recurring dollars and $1.79 million in federal ARPA funds. The ARPA $1.79 million is dedicated to UDC academic infrastructure support, such as translating work and life experience into academic credit and articulation agreements to provide academic credit for workforce development classes. Notably, our proposed FY 2024 subsidy budget no longer includes the ARPA funds of $417,000 for our component of the Mayor's Violence Interruption Program. Since the university owns the curriculum for the program, we will continue to offer this course as part of our continuing education classes. However, without funding from the district, we will have to charge individuals who want to take the class. Yet, because we will continue to budget for the expenses associated with our violence interruption program, we will need budget authority of $417,000 included in our FY 2024 subsidy budget, regardless of whether we monetize the course or if we receive funding from the district for it. Turning to the $94.99 million in recurring local funding, it includes $1.4 million to cover the out-of-year cost associated with the FY 2022 and FY 2023 cost of living adjustments for non-union staff, the removal of approximately $400,000 in one-time federal ARPA funding. This comes from the removal of $500,000 in one-time ARPA funding that was included in our FY 2023 budget for a violence interrupter career pathway study, but an increase of $79,000 in our ARPA academic infrastructure support funds, and a modest decrease of $240,979 in non-personnel services. In light of the tight fiscal climate this budget season, our proposed 2024 budget does not include any of the following requested enhancements: $6.7 million in local recurring funding to support competitive compensation and pay equity, $2.3 million in local recurring funding to support hiring additional IT STEM faculty, $0.5 million to support ongoing annual costs, such as licensing and maintenance fees associated with implementing a customer relationship management that is a CRM system. Please note that this accompanies one of our capital budget requests. We understand that the district is facing a difficult budget season and that the mayor had to make hard decisions about what to prioritize in her proposed budget. Thus, we do not come before you today to ask for all of the above, but thought it important that the council understand the needs of the university. While we are grateful to the mayor for her support of the university and for keeping our proposed FY 2024 subsidy budget intact, we do want to bring your attention to a cut to the deputy mayor for education's budget in the area of Workforce Investment Council grants. For both FY 2022 and FY 2023, UDC has received WIC grant funding for our IT and nursing pipeline students. Both are priority pathways for the university and the district. The funds have supported tuition and cost of living stipends for students enrolled in our workforce development and lifelong learning, credit-bearing community college, and bachelor's degree IT and nursing programs. The council specifically included this funding using federal ARPA funds, beginning with the FY 2022 budget. Although the funds were term limited through September 2024, we were hopeful that we would subsequently be able to secure local funding to continue providing tuition and cost of living support to these students. As we look forward, we continue to be hopeful that we will be able to prioritize these areas in the future. Moving to our capital budget, the mayor's proposed FY 2024 to 2029 Capital Improvement Plan, or SIP, for UDC has a net decrease of $78 million from our approved FY 23 through 2028 SIP. As proposed, the university is projected to receive $65 million in capital funding in FY 2024, $18 million in FY 2025, $31 million in FY 2026, and $27 million in FY 2028. Despite the overall decrease, we are thankful that many of our current capital projects, renovation of our Bacchus campus, replacement of Van Ness campus roofs and windows, improvements to the Van Ness campus infrastructure and IT upgrades, and our campus paver restoration remain fully funded in the mayor's proposed SIP. And we humbly request that the council also retains full funding for these important projects. Additionally, we thank Mayor Bowser for shifting forward from FY 2025 to FY 2024, $5 million in capital funds for classroom and lab modernizations and renovations. This funding will allow us to continue critical modernizations to the various classrooms and laboratories at our Van Ness campus. Of course, particular concern, however, is our ability to renovate 4250 Connecticut Avenue, referred to as 4250, by our promised deadline of September 2024. Although the council graciously included requested funding during the FY 2023 and FY 2028 CIP budget formulation, the increased cost of labor and materials has driven the cost of 4250 up by another $7 million. As we noted during our testimony last year, 4250 will not only serve as our state-of-the-art academic facility, but will also be swing space to enable the renovation of other buildings on our campuses. Since we are transferring Building 41 to the district for its archives, 4250 is the linchpin in our renovation plan for our Van Ness campus. The longer we delay the full renovation of that building, the longer we must defer renovating all our other buildings. Moreover, the longer the project progresses, the higher the risk that more funding will be needed. Thus, we respectfully request that the council consider including an additional $7 million in FY 2024 for this project. I would also like to take a minute to discuss the incompatibility between our financial system Banner and the district's new financial system, DIFS. While Banner accounts for all encumbered funds, DIFS does not. Currently, UDC has encumbered over $22 million in capital funds, but because DIFS does not account for this, the district's financial system makes it appear as if UDC has $22 million more in available capital funding than we actually have. Additionally, in making the transition from the district's old financial system, SOAR, to DIFS, two reporting errors, which are related to old capital projects that UDC closed out several years ago, were discovered. UDC's Office of the Chief Financial Officer is working with the Office of Budget and Planning to rectify these issues. If the university receives the required $7 million for 4250, 5 of our top 7 capital project priorities will be fully funded. This is an outstanding achievement, particularly if you consider where we stood when I began my tenure in 2015. Of course, this was made possible with the commitment of both the mayor and the council. Thank you on behalf of the UDC community for continuing to support us. However, our work is not yet complete. In order to transform our facilities to be environments conducive to learning, we still need a total of $387 million to complete the necessary renovations and capital projects at all of the university's locations. Given that our proposed 2024 to 2029 CIP only includes $141.5 million, over $245 million remains to be invested. As noted previously, the mayor's proposed CIP fully funds the renovation of our Bacchus campus, replacement of Van Ness campus roofs and windows, improvements to the Van Ness campus infrastructure and IT upgrades, and our campus paver restoration. Yet, in addition to the $7 million for 4250, we require funding for implementation of a customer relationship management, that is CRM system, on-campus housing for our students, modernization and renovation of our classrooms and laboratories, upgrades and site development of our 143-acre experimental land-grant farm, the Firebird Farm, and the ownership of the leasehold rights to our old Capitol Heights location. All of the aforementioned projects require a total of $351.5 million, and since our proposed CIP only includes $141.5 million over the next 6 years, we need $210 million in additional funding for our highest priorities. Included in this $210 million ask is an additional $7 million, as mentioned in FY24, to complete the renovation of 4250 Connecticut. $8 million, $2 million annually in FY 2024 through 2027 for CRM implementation. $15 million in FY 2025 and $20 million in FY 2026 for student housing, $112 million to renovate classrooms and labs, $20 million to upgrade and develop Firebird Farm, and $28 million for the purchase of old CH leasehold rights in Ward 8 in FY 2025. We should note that while the council includes the $28 million for OCH in our approved FY 2023 through 2028 CIP, our proposed CIP eliminates that $28 million. Yet, because this funding is not needed until FY 2025, we do not believe it necessary at this time to include such funding as part of the 24 to 29 CIP process, and kindly request that the requisite amount be included during the formulation of the FY 2025 budget. Before I conclude, I would like to inform you of one concern the university has with Title I, Subtitle A, the Office of the Chief Technology Officer Amendment Act of 2023. As currently drafted and as an independent agency, the university has some concerns about how this subtitle would affect our information technology systems oversight. Additionally, it raises accreditation concerns, and given that the university is in the middle of its self-study, which we complete in 2025, we do not want to embark on any endeavors that would cause middle states to question the university's independence. As this is my last budget hearing before the council, I would like to take a moment to again thank you, Chairman, the council, and the mayor for your continued partnership and support for the university over the last 8 years. It has been a privilege to be UDC's longest serving president, and to advocate on behalf of our faculty, staff, alumni, and most importantly, our students. It is always on their behalf that I speak. We will continue to optimize whatever level of support we are provided. However, the public institution of higher learning in and for the nation's capital should be a model for the nation, as are our libraries, park and recreation systems, and public school facilities. UDC should be an affordable, quality university that is key to a sustainable, resilient, and most importantly, equitable future. A shining example of a state system of higher learning in a district that is poised to be a state. That can happen only if the mayor and council invest the resources needed to make it so. Moreover, as the university embarks on a new time with new leadership, it is important to provide its next president with the resources required to enable UDC to live up to the responsibility implied by the date of its birth, July 4th, 1976, the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. I kindly ask you to consider what level that should be and to fund the public institution of higher learning in and for the nation's capital accordingly. Thank you again for your and the cabinet's support and the opportunity to testify. I'd also like to take, with your indulgence, this moment to thank Team UDC. It has been the best team I've worked with in higher education, and I'm sure that they are up to the task of continuing to move the university forward. With that, Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions you and or your committee may have.
Thank you, President Mason. I probably do have a few questions. Not sure where to start, so maybe I'll start here. What's your response to the testimony from one of the witnesses regarding additional money for the infant and toddler educational programs? Dedicated bilingual program liaison at $79,000, supplemental instruction at $50,000, more bilingual professors at $443,000, and training for early childhood teaching professionals at $122,000. That's a total of $694,000. Do you think the program currently is adequate, or it could use the additional dollars if we can find them?
I think that program could use the additional dollars. We had a great celebration of the first cohort's graduation this past Saturday. You may have seen a report on that in the Post. I had a similar memo on from my team. And when you add up all the requests, it's actually $2.6 million to include, additional faculty and bilingual support team. But it is a good program, and it's a great need for the institution. And, the deadlines for meeting the licensure requirements for OSCE. And so if we could accelerate the progress through the program and improve its quality, I think it's great for the university and a great service to the district.
Well, I don't know that we can find the money, but if we find the money, is there the capacity to do the hiring and also enough students to enroll?
Yes.
Yes to both?
Yes, in both, yes. There's over 200 on the waiting list as we speak in terms of the students. And my community college is pretty adept at filling positions if they have the resources to do so.
What was the amount that you said from your memo?
2.6 million.
Does that 2.6 million include the scholarship fund?
It's the total of everything that was requested. And we can send you a memo with the details.
Would you please?
Yes, sir.
Does the budget right now have that $850,000 for the HEI scholarship fund?
And my recollection is that we had that through 24, and it runs out at the end of 24.
So it is in the budget for
24,
24.
yes.
Give me just a second. What about the testimony from the Van Ness Main Street regarding capital tenant improvement incentive?
Yes, so we signed a letter of intent with the Van Ness Main Street Group, which is a great partner, that we would make best efforts to lease out the retail space on the ground floor between Van Ness and Yuma. We own about 85% of that space. We've been able to attract two large tenants, but the real issue for the smaller tenants is available capital to build out the space that they need in connection with the lease. And so the testimony was about establishing, providing some funds to enable a university to build out that space. One of the challenges, though, is that as a public agency, it will probably require some legislation to go along with those funds to enable us to do that. Because public agencies, as I understand it, can't build out space for private entities. And there are more details of that the lawyers can explain better than me. But DGS has the same issue when they lease out space to private entities. But it is a challenge. The lack of the ability to build out space for smaller tenants is slowing down our ability to lease out the space.
Well, is the cost benefit that Mr. Wall spoke to,
Yeah.
is that accurate?
Yeah, I looked at his numbers. It made sense to me. I didn't have an independent verification, and I don't know if my team here looked at it, but he's a pretty respected real estate developer, and the numbers made sense to me.
Looks like somebody wants to whisper to you or speak to me.
David Franklin, Chief Operating Officer.
Yes.
Yes, so we did have the opportunity to look at those numbers. We reviewed them with our broker, and those were spot on.
I'm going to quote you on that, spot on. So of the capital needs, the highest is the 7 million for 4250.
Yes, sir. Because that's the first domino in a series of dominoes of renovating the Van Ness campus.
And the budget for Bacchus is adequate?
Yes, it's adequate for phase one. We're going to focus on renovating the existing facility, but over time, we'll probably have to expand the space there. But right now, it's enough to fully renovate the existing facility.
So when is phase two?
That's probably 2 or 3 years out.
And I assume there's no money in the budget for that.
That is correct.
And with regard to Old Congress Heights, your sense is that we just find the money, reinsert the money next year?
Yes.
Next year meaning
25.
next March when we're looking at FY25.
Yes, that's our recommendation.
And looking me in the eye, you trust us that we'll do that?
I trust the next president to ask you to do that, Mr. Chairman. And me personally, yes, I trust you, but I'd like the next president to verify.
Yeah, no, I didn't ask if you trust me. Trying to think, my predecessor, John Wilson, used to say, I'm just a lonely country boy.
I understand.
I'm not, but I'm from the city, but on the community violence intervention certification, I was a little confused by your testimony. Perhaps I don't pay as much attention to I guess it's the enterprise account and more to the subsidy. We need to clarify in am I correct in referring to it as an enterprise account, the $199 million budget?
Yes, I think it's about budget authority.
You absolutely need that budget authority specified there?
Is that, I'll defer to my colleagues here.
So Chairman Mendelson, I'm Brian Connell, Budget Officer for UDC. So if the university is going to monetize that program and use those revenues for those expenditures, we would need the budget for it in the enterprise budget agency code GF0 because that would be classified as special purpose revenue.
Okay, President Mason, in your testimony, you say the ARPA 1.791 million is dedicated to UDC academic infrastructure support, and you go on a little bit more detail. I've become wary of enterprise spending, of ARPA spending, because it's really one-time money. Is the money proposed for one-time expenditures?
It is. We are trying to be able to translate work experience and prior learning into academic credit. It's a process that once we do it, we have that information. And then to articulate our courses, be able to articulate those credits from the workforce development unit to the associate's degrees and then from associates to bachelor's. And I think once we figure out those articulations, we should be in good shape.
So that's one-time work.
That's a one-time work, yes. Now, there'll be some ongoing work, but I think that ongoing work will be in the regular course of the work that we're doing now, which is articulating our programs from, workforce development all the way up through to a bachelor's degree, but that's in the normal course of things for us.
So since I don't live in the academic world, what we're talking about, for example, translating work and life experience is coming up with, I'll say, a formula so that my work or life experience, applying the formula to my work and life experience, then enables you to calculate academic credits from me.
Yes, sir.
And once you figure that out, you can apply it to
Once
me
we figure
this
out the
year.
process to do that. My chief academic officer is here. I'm gonna guess, but there is an agency that is able to do that, and they're working with us to create and develop the process for our campus so that we can work with them to translate the experience into credits. Let me just look around for a second. Do I have that right, Dr. Potter? Yes. And the name of the agency, it's the American Council on Education. So they do that kind of work, and they're working with us now to be able to do it with us on our campus.
And that's legitimate in terms of credits toward a degree that any university, if they figure this out, can apply.
Yeah, we wouldn't be the first one to do it.
And so then once you figure that out, you could apply it to me this year or next year or the following year or to
Yes, sir.
Ms. Lancaster this year, next year, the following year.
Yes, sir.
So that's why it's one time.
Yes, sir.
You indicated that you had several enhancements that were not funded. Can you send us copies of all your enhancement requests?
Sure. And they're listed in my testimony, and that's the gist of it.
You have 4 listed.
It was, yes, I think so. I think those were the 4. Mostly it's about salaries and the CRM position. Those were the 2 biggies for us.
Is the CRM, is that a capital cost? It probably is not. Or maybe, I don't, is it a capital cost?
Well, there's two things going on there. One is the support, the personnel support we need to operate the system, and that is an operating request. But then on the capital side, there's $2 million a year to buy the system itself. And I think that's over 4 years. Am I right, guys? Yeah, over 4 years on the capital side.
All right, I'm not, am I seeing that in here?
Yes, sir. It was in my testimony.
No, you can't say yes when I can't see it.
Oh, under capital.
8 million, 2 million a year for CRM implementation. That's on page 6. And then the operating is on page 3, the $500,000 to support ongoing.
Yes, sir. That's correct. And that's a big one for us.
Can you say more about what your concern is with Title I, Subtitle A of the Budget Support Act?
Yes, so there's a proposal to put Octo in charge of all information systems for the district. As an independent agency, the act as it currently stands at a very specific place where UDC would be impacted. But this expands that act to all independent agencies in all ways. A couple of concerns. One I didn't mention was that our system really doesn't interface a lot with the districts. And so we're not sure why, this is required, but also, from an accreditation point of view, our ability to control our own information systems, is a question that may be raised because we're going through our self-study now, and the accrediting visiting team will be here in about 1.5 years. And so I'll put the question, I've asked the question and I'm waiting to have the conversation, but it is something that we're not real sure how it ultimately is going to impact us and whether or not, depending on the answer, it's going to affect our accreditation.
I have to turn to my colleague, but I'm going to ask one more question. That's on the housing.
Yes, sir.
There's no money in the capital budget right now for housing. You in the past have indicated that you would like to acquire or build some housing for students. What you have in your testimony is 15 million in FY25 and 20 million in FY26 for 35 million. Is that the total cost?
Probably not, but we're trying to put together a pool of capital to do a private-public partnership, if we can. And Chairman, we've talked about this more than once, and I know it's going to, you're not quite convinced, but I'll say this, if it'll help. I've been visiting most of the principals at the high schools in the area, and almost without exception, they tell me if we had housing, we could get a lot more residents from the district to attend UDC. Because one of the challenges they have is, they want to have a campus experience, but also from an education perspective, they need to move from where they are to a different place in order to be able to learn better. And so I'll just put that on the record for you to consider, but we're trying to figure it out because from an enrollment perspective and also from a serving the district perspective, it's become clear to me that it is pretty important, for the future of the university and the future of the district.
I have some more questions. Let me turn to Councilmember Fruman.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. Let me start by thanking you, President Mason, for your service to the university and to the District of Columbia. It's been a pleasure working with you over the years and now in this new role for me, and working to connect UDC as much as possible to the local community and to strengthen UDC for the city as a whole. And the district deserves to have an excellent, accessible public university, and you have done. I like the reference to the longest serving president at UDC, and you have really moved the ball forward on this, and I am thankful for it and hopeful that your successor will bring the same kind of energy and success. I do hear you that it's a difficult financial year and you're happy enough to have stayed above water in a sense with a handful of follow-on asks that are important for you. And I want to try to be as helpful as I can to make sure that we can fill those asks. There's some bigger things over the horizon. One of the things that I was really pleased to see was the Pathways to Behavioral Health Degrees Act that passed last year, and I was disappointed that it wasn't funded in this budget. And people have checked through already different kinds of programs that UDC is doing or is planning to do that really can strengthen our workforce. Your references to the nursing program, to the IT program. I'm a big fan of the causes program. All of those things really link up with our workforce needs, and I hope we can invest in them, including the desperate need that we have for social workers. As you've acknowledged, UDC is fundamental to the fabric of the local community. The metro stop is Van Ness UDC. That commercial corridor, which is the heart of UDC, is very important to lots of people around. And so I'm very supportive of the tenant improvement budget proposal that's been made, and hopefully we can make that happen. It makes me think, and now I'll turn for questions and things that have come up through the testimony. For 4250, I hear you that the $7 million capital ask may be among the highest priorities that you have. Tell me, for that property, what's the plan for the ground floor? Is the ground floor, it had historically been retail? Are you expecting it to be retail again, or will the whole building be a university building?
No, the plan is for it to be retail, council member. And first, let me thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. But the plan is for it to be retail. Right now, Mom's it will occupy a large portion of that space. And one of the reasons that we're bringing the request for build out funds on the capital side is so that we can be able to facilitate the closing of some requests from some people who want to lease out the rest of the space on the ground floor. So we've made a commitment that ground level on 42 of Connecticut Avenue will be retail space. And that's where we're headed. In the short run, the only exception will be the ground floor of 4225, the old Walgreens building, which we're going to use for swing space as we renovate the rest of the campus.
And so I think it's interesting though, on 4250, maybe the same kind of leverage argument applies there, that if we can get that built and we can get it occupied with retail tenants on the ground floor, that it can begin generating tax revenue that could defray some of that increased cost that we're talking about on the capital side. You brought up 4225 and the Walgreens site. You know, one of the things that I've been very supportive of and sympathetic to is the pantry. And wasn't on my list of questions, but when you brought up 4225, if you use that as swing space, is there the prospect that the pantry can stay in that site for some period of time?
Yes, sir. That is the plan, and we don't envision them having to move anytime in the near future.
I am so glad to hear that because I think the pantry and with your support really serves a crucial function. And so I'm really glad to hear that your feeling is that it can stay for a while. On the workforce investment grants that you through the deputy mayor's office that you referenced, and as I heard you, I thought you were saying that the overall pool had shrunk. And then what's the implication of that? Do you have a specific reason to think that the grants to you won't be coming, or is it just concern that given that the pool has shrunk, that will be more competitive and you have a greater risk of not being funded for the important programs that you're looking at?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry I wasn't clear there. Because the funds were removed from the WIC budget, that means that they're no longer available to UDC. So there's a direct relationship there.
There is a direct relationship.
Absolutely. So yes, and so that was support for, as I mentioned, nursing, IT, and teacher preparation, and those monies just won't be there anymore.
Well, I mean, that's actually a deep concern for me. And nursing, we really need to strengthen our pipeline for nursing, all of the things that you just listed. So are you making a specific ask that we try to add money into the deputy mayor's budget in order to restore funding for those programs, or just, I didn't hear it as a specific ask, but should I have heard it as a specific ask?
Well, I think given the budget situation and the economic circumstances of the district, it's not my place to ask for what to put into the deputy mayor's budget. But I thought I should make the council aware of the impact on UDC.
And it's the impact on UDC, but I have to say, I've been meeting with different hospitals and long-term care facilities, just thinking about nurses. The enormous need for nurses has implications not just for UDC, but for the city as a whole. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. You would have heard the testimony from folks asking about the archives, and this is there's the advisory group, there's the university, there's the city in planning this archives process. And I take it, who's the right person at UDC for the folks in the archives group to be reaching out to try to coordinate around plans for the archives?
Yes, sir. Just so you know, and it's purely coincidental, we had a meeting yesterday with Secretary Bassett, the director of the DC Archives, the architects, and DGS about the project. I think that we're in a good space. And we have a understanding of how we're going to be working together once, not only to build the facility, but how to use it once it's built. I think given the question you asked, the easiest thing is for the head of the advisory committee to email me, and then I will connect her with the people on the team that they should specifically gather to have that conversation with.
Okay, wonderful. I'm sure you will get that email this afternoon. One of the things that gets raised around the archives is the extent to which there's a plan for community engagement about in the planning for the archives. And I don't know whether or not that was a thing that was discussed at your meeting the other day or not, but I hope that there can be some community engagement around this.
Yeah, it actually was discussed, and that is on the list of things to do. If it was our project, we would have done it by now, but it's not our project, it's a DGS project, but they understand that that's an important component of the process.
So I'm going to have some other questions, but my clock is running out, and related to this topic, there's an interplay between the archives and the field. And I wonder, have you sorted it out so that we can be confident that the archives won't impinge on the field? Is one question. And then the second related question is, what are your plans for moving forward with the improvements to the fields? There's two, which is a thing that I've engaged on for a long time, and I know the university has wanted to get it done for a long time. When can we hope that it can get done, and is there anything I can do to help you?
Yes, sir. So the answer is this. The plan we saw for the archive yesterday, which I think was the $100 million plan, was able to accommodate the field that we were concerned about, which is the field that our students would primarily use for intramural activity, as well as it would have a track for our championship track team to practice on. The competitive field, which we were working on, we've run into a glitch, which is that there's a tree there that is what's called a heritage tree. And there will be a lot of conversation about what to do with that tree. Can it be moved? If it can be moved, how expensive can it be? Will it be to move it? Whether it needs to be moved. And I think that we're headed in your direction on that tree. So I'll give you some notice that conversation is coming. But then once we work through all of that, and the reason the tree is an issue is because we can't make the field wide enough for intercollegiate competition with the tree there. And so it's an issue. And I know trees are important to UDC and important to the district, and certainly important to the neighborhood, but it is a question we have to put on the table. And then once the fields are done though, they'll be like all of our facilities, primarily for intercollegiate use, secondly for our students. And then, we always want to be good neighbors and, we'll work with the community. And I know you have a specific interest in soccer to be able to, allow access as much as is possible, given our first and second priorities.
So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I guess I'm assuming that the field that you're talking about with the tree is the one that is further away from Van Ness Street. But is that right, or is it the field?
No, that is correct. Yes, it's the larger intercollegiate competition field.
Okay, so let's stay close on that, because I will want to try to help you on that. And I really appreciate your answers and your service. And now I'll let the chairman take back over. So thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, if I could just say one thing before council member leaves, just for the record and for clarification, the automatic announcement on the subway used to say Van Ness UDC. Now it says Van Ness University of the District of Columbia, just so you'll know.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And those extra words are?
Well, people didn't know what UDC was, and now they know it's the University of the District of Columbia.
I wanted to ask you about some shifts in your budget.
Yes.
I'm looking at table 4. You're reducing financial services by $2 million because financial services aren't important. Well, I don't believe that, but
Yeah.
and you're also reducing the chief operating officer by $13 million, almost $14 million, because the COO is an important member. He's sitting next to you.
Yeah, those are internal budgetary moves that end up in the same place, but I'm going to let my budget director answer that question, Chairman.
Yeah.
He probably has account numbers and everything.
Chairman Mendelson, I have Brian Connell again, Budget Officer. So the change that you reference in financial services, that's mostly related to use of spendable fund balance that was originally there as a placeholder until there are identified needs in FY23. Those funds are being used for one-time NPS needs across various departments. And so it's just a reallocation of funds from financial services into the various colleges and schools. As
So
far,
you're saying that 2 million decrease shows up in small amounts elsewhere?
yes, that is correct.
Like,
$100,000 to $200,000 for the most part across various different causes, arts and sciences. And with respect to the decrease in the chief operating officer, that's related to the HERF funds that are expiring. So those funds were programmed in the office of the chief operating officer in FY23 and prior years. As those funds are expiring at the end of June of 2023, that office now shows a reduction because those funds are no longer there in their restricted grants.
explain again how the financial services is spread among academic programs. It was financial services. It's not financial services within the academic funds.
Correct. So in FY23, there was a certain amount of spendable fund balance that was programmed in financial services. In FY24, university has identified specific needs, one-time NPS needs, to reallocate that spendable fund balance.
So in other words, in FY23, financial services was a placeholder for some funds that had an academic
Yes.
need.
Yes. Pending the identification of those one-time needs.
And so there's no effect on the financial services.
Correct.
There's also a substantial cut to line 2040, Student Services Administration. I'm guessing that half of that shows up under Student Life Services.
That is also related to a decrease in restricted grants. I believe the majority of that's related to Title III funding. That is still within the university's budget, but just budgeted elsewhere in 24.
Am I right that some of it got budgeted in Student Life and
I believe
Services?
you are correct, Chairman Mendelson, that it was a shift within the student development and success to that other organization.
But in any event, student services aren't being cut. What
Correct.
about enrollment services?
Same.
I very quietly heard same, but I'm a little bit more skeptical there.
No, students, all of those are in student development and success. And so they're looking for the details, but a lot of that was shifting money internally within that unit. And some of it, as I recall, was Title III. And I think there was some federal funds in there that may have come out of the budget.
Reallocated within.
Sorry,
Yes,
say
that
that
is
again.
correct. It's just a shift within student development and success. It's not a decrease in services.
And what about the reduction in learning resources, which is 4003?
That reduction is actually related to a budget structure change for FY24, Chairman Mendelson. And so I can direct your attention just a couple lines down to 4007, Center for the Advancement of Learning. So there's actually a budget for those two functions. They're really two separate functions in the university. And so a portion of the budget from learning resources was split out to form that new activity, the Center for the Advancement of Learning.
I must say Center for the Advancement of Learning sounds better.
Good unit.
President Mason, you are doing some additional, taking some additional initiatives with regard to enrollment to try to attract students. Where does that show up here?
It's not, well, unless some of it has to do with the shift of funds within student development and success. Because that's where recruitment and admissions and enrollment resides. But a lot of it is just changing, not even changing, doing what we wanted to do pre-pandemic and being able to pick the ball back up now. Like visiting all of the high schools, as I mentioned, setting up college days for UDC on the campuses, introducing the principals to the new UDC, because a lot of principals, are still have the perception that UDC is what it was years ago, but it really isn't. And devoting more funds to the kind of supports that our students need, in addition to just financial aid. We're starting to understand better that, many of our students come to us with challenges that get in the way of learning. Housing, food insecurities, trauma. And I think that, we're better equipped to understand it now and be able to address it. And so that, there's a lot going on there. And then the last piece is the CRM. We're one of the, they tried at UDC to implement a CRM, which is a customer relationship management system. And so it affects everything from marketing to alumni to processing students who make applications. But we've been doing all of that manually for years. And now we're in a position where we have the technological skills in-house, but also the staff has been trained and the skills are there to be able to actually use it. And so when you put all of that together, we're starting to see an uptick in enrollment slowly but surely post-pandemic. But we're expecting that to accelerate given all the things that we're doing to try to be more attractive to district residents. Because outside of the district, we're pretty popular because we're the least expensive, we're located in the nation's capital, and we're fully accredited, and now we're starting to get national rankings. And so when you go online, UDC is a pretty good sell. But locally, we've been having to deal with perception challenges, and we're taking those on as well as others. Yeah. The $500,000 is communication and marketing in the budget that's the CRM support, right? CRM. Communications and marketing is part of the $500,000 that we're putting in the budget to help enhance remote enrollment.
And where does that show up?
Activities 60. That's at activities 6019. Under communications and public affairs.
Yeah, that's also for, I'm going to call it recruitment.
Recruitment.
So if I'm not quite sure how we could add budget authority without balancing, but without having a balancing issue. But what's the program called again? Violence interrupter?
Violence interruption, yes.
Where would we add that authority?
Chairman Mendelson, that would be in activity 4001, academic support. That's where the funding is currently programmed.
How do we add authority without having a revenue related to it?
Right. So if the district were paying for that program, we would need the budget authority in both the subsidy account, agency GG0, and in the enterprise budget for the overall budget for the university and agency GF0. However, if the university is monetizing that program and both collecting the revenue and having expenditures related to that program, the district wouldn't need to fund it, but the university would still need the budget authority to expend it. And so that budget authority would be supported by the revenues that the university would be collecting. And so we would be collecting the revenue directly and then also expending the fund. So we still need the budget authority to make those expenditures within the university's overall budget. So that's why we still need the budget in agency code GF0, even though we wouldn't need it as part of the subsidy account if the university is just monetizing it.
Okay. Did that violence interrupter program get off the ground this year?
Yes. It's up and running. It's a pretty popular program. We've had, I think, 3 cohorts go through so far. And it'll probably serve about 60 students a year.
So why was it eliminated?
Not clear. But, you know, it was one-time funds going to run out next year. We were part of a larger initiative that seems to have been pretty successful for the mayor, People of Promise. There's a not-for-profit that is doing similar work, but not at an academic level as we are. But we weren't given a reason. It was just taken out of the budget.
Was the 417 coming from WIC or?
471 was at ARPA funds, I believe.
Where does your endowment currently stand?
It's right now it's in the mid to high 50s. You know, the market, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. The market goes up and down. It went down and now it's creeping back up. It's about 57, as I recall.
Yeah, Roy Lane, Chief Financial Officer. Right now, I think at the end of February, it's about $58 million.
That seemed to be a lot higher than it used to be.
It had gotten as high as 6. Go ahead, Roy. I'm sorry.
Actually, by the end of fiscal year 21, it was like 63, and then it went significantly down. We ended the year about 53, and we started going back up. We ended the year about 54. Started going back up. By the end of the first quarter, we had picked up 2.5 million, and by the end of February, it's up by about 4.8 million. So it's starting to trend up.
I'm assuming that's stock market value.
Yeah, the market is actually going up. We just had a presentation from the Stifel, who are managing the funds for us, and currently the news is very positive as far as the market, the movement of the market upwards.
Okay, but my question was, I'm going to say 8 years ago, was it 50 in the 50s?
It was about 50. Remember, as part of the challenge match, we were depositing some of the match into the per year requirement.
Yes.
And so that raised it some, but the big increase was what is that? The bull market.
Yes.
The bull market, which really increased the value on paper, unrealized value on paper, to a little over 60, and then it dropped to 53, and now it's back up again. Well, but not completely back up, but up a little bit. Over 60 is close to that.
I think Councilmember Fruman asked you a question about who at UDC is working on the archives, and I started to write it down and I didn't. Who is it?
Well, I said they can contact me and I'll put them in touch with whoever they want to talk to. Probably the chief academic officer and some folks on his team, and maybe someone from my office as well. I just need to understand what they want to talk about.
Give me a second. I don't have any other questions. That doesn't mean I won't, but I don't.
Thank you, sir.
So-
And since this is my last public appearance, I'd like to thank you, the mayor and the district, for the opportunity to serve.
Well, thank you, but we'll see if we can create a reason for you to come back before you leave.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you.
Can I just chime in thanking President Mason also for his service?
I don't know if you had any more questions. I'm really very bad here. Did you have any more?
You know, I'm okay. We between us, we covered all of the topics that I had to cover, but I didn't want to end my participation in this hearing without thanking President Mason one more time. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you're excused. Thank you. I'm going to pause for a second, which probably means like a minute to set up for Commission on Arts and Humanities. This is so exciting. So we're going to pick up with the Commission on Arts and Humanities. Let me explain what's happening here. We're going to hear testimony from, I believe it's 9 non-government witnesses regarding the mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 24 for the Commission on Arts and Humanities. Then we'll hear from the chair of the commission and the interim executive director. Following all of that testimony, that will conclude this hearing, which is a hearing on the budget. We have a second hearing that's scheduled that will start immediately or within 5 or 10 minutes after this budget hearing. And that hearing will be on the commission's nomination of Aaron Myers to be the executive director, and also on a bill that I introduced at the request of the commission regarding the ability of the commission to appoint its executive director. So there are, I believe, some witnesses for that hearing, like maybe 8 plus the nominee, and they will be welcome in when we start that hearing, which will be after this hearing, which is after we hear from the public, as well as you all sitting at the table about your budget for next year. So let me call the witnesses who've asked to testify. Charity Blackwell, who's Senior Director of Arts and Culture at DC Scores. Kendall Bryan, who's Interim Director at Amy Jacques Garvey Institute. Maureen Dwyer, who's Executive Director of Sitar Arts Center. Amy Austin, who's with Theater Washington, I believe as President and CEO. Rebecca Medrano, who's Executive Director of Gala Hispanic Theater. Rebecca Lemos Otero, who's with Humanities DC. Betsy Purvis, who's Director of Development for the DC Youth Orchestra Program. Jenny Billfield, who's President and CEO of Washington Performing Arts. Ryan Ha, who is founder of Dreamy DC. So they should all be let in. And we will begin with Ms. Blackwell. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Mendelson. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of DC Scores. For those who don't know, DC Scores is a nonprofit that serves more than 3,000 youth in the district through our after-school poetry, soccer, and service learning programs. Our programs build teams of poet athletes, of which are young people who are committed to their physical, emotional, and social well-being. Poet athletes use their voices to express themselves and serve as leaders in their communities and speak up against injustices. On behalf of DC Scores, I would like to thank the mayor for increasing the Commission on the Arts and Humanities budget for FY24. And I would also like to thank you, Chairman Mendelson, and the DC Council for continuing to support the arts in DC. The Commission is a critical partner in implementing our poetry program. Its vital funding ensures that every single one of our poet athletes take part in our weekly writing workshops after school at no cost for them or their families. Our kids are provided with everything they need. So pens, notebook, curriculum materials, and they are provided to help them unlock their creativity and make their own contribution to the arts in DC. The Commission's funding also enables us to employ and train writing coaches, many of whom are teachers in the public schools where we work. These writing coaches not only instill a love for poetry and spoken word in our poet athletes, but also provide our children with supportive spaces where they can explore their identities, hopes, and fears through poetry and art. We sincerely hope that the Council will protect the Commission's budget. We look forward to continue to serve as trusted partners to bring arts education and experiences to thousands of children across the city. And to demonstrate the impact of what we can have together, I would like to end with a group poem from DC Scores poet athletes at Sojourner Truth Public Charter School, located in Ward 5. The title of the poem is called Ain't I a Person? Ain't I a person whose voice is special, whose voice is loved? Ain't I a person whose voice is going beyond and above, whose voice is strong? Ain't I a person whose voice is strong enough to be heard? Ain't I a person whose beautiful Black voice can make an impression on this world with the ability to cause earthquakes and break down your beliefs and stigma? My voice represents years of fighting. I will not be silenced. From Rosa Parks to Sojourner Truth, you cannot silence my voice. My voice is the proof that Black will always be beautiful, never shaken. Ain't I a person strong enough to change the universe, move mountains? My Black is beautiful, and so is our voices. Thank you, Chairman Mendelson.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwell. Kendall Bryan.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I apologize, my camera's not working today, but I want to thank you, especially Chairman Mendelson, for having this hearing. And thank you especially for standing up for DC's right for self-determination against our Congress. I also want to thank our director, David Markey of the commission. I want to thank the senior grants officer, Terrell Johnson, and grant manager Khalid Randolph for their professionalism and for helping me whenever I had an issue in achieving the objectives of this grant. I also want to give out an extra special thank you to Commissioner Cora Masters-Berry for continuing the legacy of our Mayor for Life, Marion Berry, to keep that legacy alive and well. I'm here to testify in favor of expanding the East Arts Grant. As a new grantee, I can say that the East Arts Grant offers support for qualified nonprofit organizations that identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color centered organizations to deliver exemplary arts and humanities experiences to DC residents who reside within the Northeast and Southeast quadrants of our city. Now, these projects include many disciplines, including dance, design, folk, traditional arts, literature, media arts, music, theater, visual, and other humanities. Here at the Amy Jacques Garvey Institute, we're doing a multidisciplinary project that focuses on comparative ethics, comparative philosophy, and media arts, and literature and linguistics. The East Arts Grant is a vital part of our social infrastructure for youth in this city, along with other programs from the OST office, OSSI, DOES, year-round and summer workforce development, and DPR as well. All these programs work together to serve our youth. I'm particularly concerned about youth east of the river in Ward 7 and 8. For FY23, the allocation of the East Arts Grant was $1.038 million. I'm urging the council to increase this for over $500,000 for FY24. This will allow more youth in Northeast and Southeast to be served. It will allow more organizations, grassroots organizations, to participate in this grant and to allow the current grantees to expand their programming. I know that any increase in this East Arts Grant will have a positive impact on our youth, especially underserved areas in our city. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Maureen Dwyer. I believe she's being moved from the attendee room to the panelist room. Ms. Dwyer, there you are. Ms. Dwyer, you're.
Hi, sorry about that. I was not on the screen, so I'm here now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Mendelson and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm Maureen Dwyer, the Executive Director of Sitar Arts Center. We are a nonprofit that provides equitable access to visual, performing, and digital arts education in Washington, D.C. for youth from early childhood through young adulthood. Our mission mandates that 80% of our students are from households earning 60% or less of AMI, and most of our participants are from households at 30% of AMI. We are located in Ward 1, and we serve young people from every ward of DC. The general operating support from the Commission on the Arts and Humanities helps Sitar to ensure that no family is turned away because of inability to pay. I'm also a co-founder and a member of the steering committee of the DC Arts Education Alliance. We very much appreciate the increase in the DC CAH budget for FY24, and we commend the decision of the Commission to enable that increase by allocating proposed money from the fund balance for the upcoming budget year. It's a time when the demand for Sitar's programming is especially strong. There is a mental health crisis for youth in the United States and in DC, and young people turn to Sitar for a community of deep belonging, opportunities to express themselves and understand themselves through arts practices, and most importantly, a really safe, enriching out of school time space. Disconnection and risk of violence is intensifying for older youth and young adults in DC, and Sitar is launching an intensive arts-based workforce development program to provide earn-to-learn pathways in the creative industries. Meanwhile, our operating costs are rising due to growing programs that are growing to meet needs of DC residents and the rapidly increasing cost of living in DC. General operating support helps Sitar to pay our employees and our teaching artists a livable wage for our city. The growth in the FY24 budget ideally will transfer to growth in operating grants amounts for arts organizations. That is why I'm highly concerned about the proposed amendment to the legislation that places a cap of 2% increase on the commission's budget for each future year. I ask that the members of the Arts Education Alliance and indeed all arts organizations and artists be invited to a constructive discussion about how this could implicate DC's creative economy for the future before this significant change to the structure is enacted. To contribute to the economic future, Sitar is purchasing the first floor of affordable housing building in partnership with our partner Jubilee Housing. The Commission FAB grants have been instrumental to this purchase, and we will be working with 18 to 24-year-old districts from historically marginalized communities. The expansion also will allow Sitar to provide additional affordable rental space to artists and arts organizations, which is a reported need post-pandemic. And through the Arts Education Alliance, Sitar partners with the Arts Institute for Cultural Advancement, and along with Theater Lab, CHA, and Life Pieces to Masterpieces, we're training young people in technical theater to strengthen opportunities for these youth, the city's theater scene, and DC's creative economy. In closing, I acknowledge the strong inclusive leadership of Chairperson Van Lee, the leadership of Interim Director David Markey, and welcome the opportunity to work with incoming Executive Director Aaron Myers. I'm concerned about the change in the revenue structure, which has enabled Sitar's growth up to this point, and I really hope we can look at that carefully. Thank you to the Commission and to the Council for your support, and I urge the Council to commit to maintaining the objectives embodied in the current established CAH-based funding structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dwyer. Amy Austin.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yes, still morning. Hey. Good morning, Chairman Mendelson and members of the committees of the whole. My name is Amy Austin, and I'm President and CEO of Theater Washington. Thank you for the opportunity to testify to support additional funding for arts organizations. Thank you for your vital support of the DC Commission on the Arts and Amenity to support arts organization and artists. The growth in the budget of the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities over the years is deeply appreciated. The mission of Theater Washington is to support, strengthen, recognize, and celebrate the theater community. We do this in various ways, including our key programs, Taking Care, Theater Week, Theater Summit, Theater Work, and the Helen Hayes Awards, along with convening and shared training. We have a very comprehensive website about Theater Washington and the community at theaterwashington.org. We are grateful for the support that we receive from the DC Commission as one of the few service organizations that is dedicated to strengthening the arts in Washington. It's no secret that the arts industry was hit hard during the pandemic and continues to face difficult hardships with a long road to recovery. We have banded together in many ways, including a unified mask mandate for the safety of our audiences, artists, and staff. We're proud of our ability to collaborate in a very competitive industry. Unfortunately, box office numbers show a slow audience return and unpredictable last-minute ticket buying decisions, leading to uncertainty in planning for what is often more than 50% of the operating budget for the theaters. Despite careful controls, COVID outbreaks have forced theaters to cancel weeks or weekends of shows, which often cannot be rescheduled. These factors mean that theaters will face significant budget deficits for the next 3 to 5 years. Our member theaters are finding unique and innovative ways to build audience across generations, but the financial reality cannot be solved within a year or two. I'm here to discuss what we see as 3 unmet needs for theaters and for other arts and cultural organizations. First, a transparent funding mechanism for the city to support larger capital projects such as building purchases or renovation. Additionally, such a fund can support creating new spaces for Black box theaters, rehearsal spaces, and artist housing. The second is to provide supplemental operating support for organizations to build capacity in their role as economic drivers in the communities. Cultural institutions are a necessary ingredient for economic growth, like restaurants and retail, but many arts organizations have dipped into their reserve, compromising their capacity for programming. Supplemental operating funds will support organizations' ability to hire talent at competitive wages and execute these programs, which support the Downtown Action Proposal and the Mayor's Comeback Plan. And lastly, to support a marketing campaign to attract regional audiences to live performing arts in the district. Returning and new audiences need persuasive marketing to encourage them to seek out the cultural offerings in the district. The theater industry in Washington, D.C. provides excellence in the theater locally and nationally. We have a diversity in size, mission, sensibility across organizations like Shakespeare, Arena Stage, Gala, Woolley, Studio, Constellation, Mosaic, and dozens of other theaters. The work of these theaters attracts and develops a solid and thriving creative community of DC residents who are invested in the community, share their work with DC school programs, and cultivate the next generation of artists to make Washington, D.C. their artistic home. We know that our city is greatly enhanced by the vibrant arts organization that draw hundreds of people who also eat in restaurants, take public transportations, and make the streets come alive at night. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Austin. Rebecca Medrano.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Rebecca Medrano. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Grupo de Artistas Latinoamericanos, or Gala Hispanic Theater. I want to start by thanking Mayor Bowser, Chairman Mendelson, and the City Council for their continued commitment to dedicated funding for the arts and for supporting increased funding for the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities so that arts organizations in the nation's capital may continue to thrive and recover from the devastating pandemic. While people refer to the post-pandemic era, those of us in performing arts industry know that we are still in the pandemic era. This year, for the first time in over 5 years, Gala will end its fiscal year with a substantial deficit, and many arts organizations are predicting major deficits this year and next. There are various reasons for our critical financial situation. Audiences have not yet returned in full force. Employees are demanding higher wages for the same work. There is a shortage of technical personnel in the field locally and nationally, so competition drives wages up. And we still have to pay for PP supplies like COVID tests, which are no longer free, masks and extra cleaning. This, coupled with the loss of government emergency COVID funds and PPP loans, is a recipe for disaster for our nonprofit arts organizations. Gala has a 47-year track record of artistic excellence and service to the community, and today stands as a center for Hispanic arts and culture, attracting over 22,000 patrons annually pre-pandemic. In 2004, Gala built its permanent facility in the historic Tivoli, becoming the cultural anchor of that mixed-use development project. Since then, Gala has helped revitalize Columbia Heights, brought diverse sectors of the community together to share excellent art across economic, social, and cultural barriers, educated thousands of youth in the arts, provided jobs to hundreds of underemployed Latinx artists and technicians, drawn national and international visitors to the city, generating tax revenues for the city, as well as forging dynamic partnerships with other arts and social service groups throughout the city. We are very grateful to the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities for many years of support and valuable partnership. Prior to COVID, programs such as field trip experiences made it possible for us to serve almost 8,000 elementary and high school students from every ward in the city. Over the years, grants from CAH, facilities and building initiatives enabled us to improve our facilities and do necessary upgrades. Finally, the general operating support from the Commission has made it possible for us to produce high-quality theater and musicals that attract local, national, and international audiences, thereby enriching the cultural fabric of the city. By commissioning new works by Latinx artists, we offer employment and career opportunities for underemployed sector of our population. And by providing youth training and performance opportunities, we prepare them to enter the job market and contribute to the creative economy. We are facing new challenges now, which make CAH grant money even more critical. Yet our CAH operating grant has decreased. As you know, communities of color were the hardest hit by COVID, making Gala's services and mission even more important. As low-income immigrant youth suffered from lack of parental presence at home and lack of technology, Gala implemented safe in-person programs to serve the most vulnerable students, thereby alleviating the sense of isolation and depression. We have become a second home for these youth, many of whom are the first in their families to attend college. About half of these students are dreamers who are uncertain about their futures here in the US, and others are newly arrived immigrants. Last year, students not only performed original plays, but they created podcasts that reached 1,500 listeners worldwide. They also created a walking tour of Washington neighbors and monuments in Spanish called Explora DC to introduce Spanish-speaking immigrants or visitors to the city to our national treasures. Without funds from CAH, these programs would be very difficult to sustain. We are now concerned that the proposed budget amendment would put a cap on CAH dedicated funds from sales tax. This could impact our operating grants in the future. The impact of arts on the economy is well known. Arts patrons park, shop, and eat in restaurants when they attend theaters, thus generating tax revenues. We urge the council to reject this amendment and to increase funding for the DC Arts Commission so the agency can continue its important work and keep Washington, DC on the map as the most diverse and inclusive cultural destination. Finally, we are grateful to Commission Chair Reggie Van Lee, to Deputy Director David Markey, and the CAH staff for their tireless efforts on behalf of our arts community. We look forward to working with the incoming Executive Director. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Medrano. Rebecca Lemos Otero.
Hi everyone. Good morning, Chairman Mendelson and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Committee of the Whole regarding the Commission of Arts and Humanities on behalf of Humanities DC. My name is Rebecca Lemos Otero, and I am the Executive Director of Humanities DC, also known as the Humanities Council of Washington, DC. We are one of the nation's state humanities councils designed to support efforts to deepen our democracy using the humanities, literacy, philosophy, history, ethics, and arts appreciation. Specifically, it is the Humanities DC's goal to illuminate the rich communities that make up Washington, DC, using the tools of the humanities. Through our grant making and public programs, we help build a vibrant city where all can engage in intellectual exchange, reflect on our connected stories, and celebrate our various cultures. I have been in my role as Executive Director for a little over 20 months, and as a native Washingtonian, daughter of immigrants, DCPS alum, I'm honored to hold this position where my team and I are charged with helping capture and share DC's stories, traditions, and culture. Through our designated funding received through the Commission of the Arts and Humanities and our support from the National Endowment of the Humanities, we were able to award $1.6 million through 92 grants directly to organizations, groups, and individuals who are creating culturally rich content that is directly tied to the fibers that make up our great city. From the plaques now installed in Georgetown honoring the African-American men and women who helped shape that neighborhood, to the oral histories collected from undocumented dreamers, shedding light on what it's like to grow up in the city. We are helping ensure that there are accessible resources available to our professional humanists as well as our inspired neighbors to capture these stories that are both incredibly valuable but often overlooked. We also invest our resources in the creation of partnerships that result in original public programming across the city. Through our work with the DC Public Library, we have built the DC Oral History Collaborative, also supported through city funds, a model program that teaches residents how to properly collect and archive stories like the experiences of the residents of Penn Branch neighborhood over the last 50 years. And just this past weekend, we worked with the DC History Center to host the DC History Conference that attracted hundreds of people to MLK Library to discuss the complex, diverse experiences that our city is built on. As we look forward, we are dedicated to finding ways to increase this work while also finding more ways to highlight the literature, art making, and documentaries being produced by our people, and encouraging the conversations that help long-term residents and newcomers alike continue to feel like this ever-changing city is a home to us all. Someone told me recently that the humanities help shape policy. The humanities are crucial for how we build our narratives and what decisions we make when we vote or become civically engaged. They may even be what helps encourage us to become more active members in our community. So today, I want to thank the Commission of the Arts and Humanities for having been such a wonderful partner to us in helping make our work possible, and for helping me, and for helping make more art that we in turn can find ways for residents to appreciate. We also thank the mayor for the increase in the CAH funding for 2024, and the council for your continued support and strong belief in dedicating direct funds to ensuring that DC's rich culture continues to thrive. Gracias.
Thank you. I don't have a copy of your statement. Could you please provide it?
Sure, I sent it last night, but I will send it again today.
Thank you. Betsy Purvis.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Betsy Purvis. I'm the Director of Development for the DC Youth Orchestra Program, and I want to start by thanking the chairman and the council for this opportunity to testify at this budget hearing for the Commission on the Arts and Humanities on behalf of DCYOP and the Arts Education Alliance, of which DCYOP is a member. DCYOP's mission is to empower young people to transform their lives through music and community, and we do this by ensuring our programming is affordable and accessible. We accept every interested young person who wants to join us to learn and grow. And in 2022-2023, we are serving more than 500 students. We subsidize the cost of tuition for all and offer additional assistance for qualifying families. Because of this, 80% of DCYOP's $1.7 million budget this year comes from contributed income. We've worked hard to diversify our funding sources. About a third of donations come from individuals, a third from foundations, and a third from government grants. We are grateful that funding from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities is included in that last tranche, and I want to thank the council for ensuring that the Commission's budget remains robust so that it can continue funding organizations like DCYOP. DCYOP receives general operating support from the Commission, as well as grants from the Arts and Humanities Education Project Grant Program, the Facilities and Buildings Program, and the Facilities and Buildings Rent Program. It is not an exaggeration to say that these funds have allowed us to remain based in Washington, D.C., even as the cost of managing a nonprofit here have increased. Commission funding helps us provide a competitive salary for our staff and teaching artists, enables us to pay for custodial and security costs at our main programming site in Ward 4, and ensures that we can keep tuition as low as possible for our families. Of our students who attend DC public schools, more than 60% report that they do not have orchestra or band programs in their school. Let me reiterate that. Commission grants allow DCYOP to offer affordable music education for DC children that they cannot access elsewhere. We are truly grateful to the Commission for the funding it provides, especially since funding levels were redesigned a few years ago. This support has provided a stable financial foundation from which we can build our programs and maintain a diversified funding base, which is necessary for our healthy operation. We have heard there's some discussion about changing the Commission's funding structure and or capping its budget due to the revenue issues that the city faces coming out of the pandemic. We would like to be able to comment and constructively engage, but we don't know enough to be able to do so thoughtfully at this time. So I would ask for transparency and clarification on future plans when and as possible. In the meantime, I would like to simply thank the Commission and the Council for its support thus far, and to urge the Council to commit to maintaining the security of the Commission's budget. We hope that, with support from the Commission on the Arts and Humanities, DCYOP and our peers in the Arts Education Alliance can continue deepening the programming we provide to students and families throughout Washington, D.C. We appreciate all that the Commission has made possible through its funding so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purvis. Jenny Billfield. You are on mute.
Here we go. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for welcoming this testimony. I'm Jenny Billfield, President and CEO of Washington Performing Arts. Thank you to Mayor Bowser, Chairman Mendelson, the City Council, Arts Commission Chair Reginald Van Lee, Interim ED David Markey, and the CAH staff and commissioners for supporting the arts through crucial dedicated funding and emergency grant making. I'd like to tell you how dedicated funding has helped support and stabilize our community, and also to share my alarm about the current proposed changes in the draft budget document, specifically pages 70 and 71. Funding from CAH for projects and general operating support has been significant for all and a lifeline for many institutions and individual artists. Government support helped all of us weather unimaginably challenging times during the first phase of the pandemic when live performance and indoor gatherings ceased. To be sure, our communities, both the people and businesses, felt this socially and economically. And after all, the arts and culture sector has been one of the most significant drivers of our local economy, accounting for nearly 9%, according to the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, at least in 2019. Public funding for the arts through CAH has enabled our community to propel crucial arts programming and education that's brought people back together and nurtured the spirits and minds of our students. Funding has brought renewed vitality to our neighborhoods, to our partner organizations and businesses by reactivating buildings and their surroundings, desperately needed downtown as our economy reboots. For many emerging organizations, funding has provided significant capacity building to support impactful, mission-based work that uplifts the people, art, and beauty of our local culture. And with these funds, we have all provided work for artists and staff who are DC taxpayers, continuing to rent offices, performance venues, rehearsal, and storage spaces. We haven't abandoned our spaces. And still, as we continue to emerge from the first phase of the pandemic and to take stock of the lasting economic impact in our field and community, we are just at the starting line of what we know and always knew would be a multi-year recovery. The recovery of the arts, the investment in the arts, is inextricably linked to the economic recovery of our wider community and not dissimilar from addressing the occupancy rates and challenges around our commercial office buildings. This is why the proposed legislative amendments for the FY24 budget are so alarming. Several years ago, the arts community successfully advocated for dedicated CAH funding tied to the sales tax revenue. In doing so, we sought a sustainable, stable path to funding year over year and advocated for an all boats rise approach. So when the city's economy was strong, funding would grow, and if the economy and tax base weakened, arts funding would reflect this economic reality. Now, the new proposed scenario for FY24 forward essentially limits the upside to a maximum possible growth of 2%, regardless of the level of growth in DC's economy. However, the proposed amendment does not limit the downside impact to public arts funds if the sales tax base shrinks. And so here's the irony. As arts organizations and artists contribute measurably to the revitalization of key neighborhoods and businesses in our city, our sector will not benefit from the shared upside and improvement, only absorb the impact when the sales tax revenue declines. I urge you to keep the current legislation as is and to strike the proposed amendment. Please consider me an ally in your advocacy. Thank you for inviting this testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Billfield. Ryan Ha.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Hi. Good morning, Chairman Mendelson, members of council and staff and all the community members. My name is Ryan Hart and I'm the founder of Dreamy DC. Now, what we do is we're performers of motivational speeches to customers all throughout the district. And these speeches are ordered through an online platform. We have over a double-digit number of speakers, and we were actually written about by in the Washington Post, which I will take an excerpt right now. Here bobbing as she barrels through DC, rush hour traffic on her bicycle, 27-year-old Liz Schluchik is on a singular mission to bring a 19th century French novelist's motivational words to a paying customer. On a street corner not far from Nationals Park, she finds Malcolm, an account manager who has paid $60 to hear her read a quote from the famous author Le Mihrabal. Laughter is the sun that drives winter from the human face. Schluchik reads the words from her phone. Malcolm contemplates them. He says the speech delivered by Dreamy always connects with something that he's going through. We haven't been able to connect with anyone for 2 years, he says. It feels really good. The dreamy transaction is over. However, the brief exchange comes with an unusual epilogue. Subject, now in her personal capacity, hands Bell the equivalent of 1/8 of an ounce of marijuana. Although the 11th word speech may not seem like much, compared with the substantial amount of marijuana, Bell says the speech is essential. If you don't give me the speech, that's defeating the purpose of the entire thing, Bell says. I think that's the best part. So I'm here to tell you today about our business, and I would like you to consider some changes to the grandfathering criteria of the licensing languages in the B24-0113 Medical Cannabis Amendment Act of 2022. So for us, we specifically chose humanities to avoid creating waste, such as T-shirts or stickers or something that people would throw away. So this is a non-tangible good, like a street performance. And we've been in operation since 2016, and we've grown from 2 to 3 performers to double digits. My father's also been a long-standing business owner in DC, so following the rules is very important to me, like very important. So we support the council's creations of a licensing pathway for I-71 businesses as tightly defined by the grandfathering criteria. But we think, since we're in the humanities field, that there is some unintended consequences with these laws. So in the space of creating inequalities in the licensing pathway, specifically the law that requires businesses seeking ABRA licenses and having a certificate of occupancy issued prior to the date of which the application is submitted, that makes sense to us and does not prevent a barrier to entry. However, regarding the basic business license, the law would require that a valid active business license issued on or before December 31st, 2022. We think that would create a barrier. While we've maintained proper business paperwork and paid taxes since 2016, we have not obtained a basic business license because these are street performers that wouldn't do such. And so we suggest that the basic business license language be amended in the Budget Support Act to mirror the certificate of occupancy language. Just require that the license before applying for the ABRA license, rather than requiring it to be backdated in 2022. And, alternatively, we're happy to pay business licenses fees dating all the way back. We also want to bring your attention to the unnecessary rigidity between the proposed licensing definition, distinguished between a physical retailer and an internet retailer. We believe this law should be clarified to ensure ABRA allows for an I-71 business in the retail space to apply for either both a physical retailer and internet retailer license concurrently. In addition to my written testimony, we also submitted a copy of the Washington Post article, as I quoted, as well as proposed legislative changes. Thanks for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Could you resend your testimony, because I don't have it?
Yes, one moment.
Send it to COW. COW@dccouncil.gov. COW for Committee of the Whole @dccouncil.gov.
Okay, can do.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Any questions?
Mr. Bryan, in your testimony, you urged an increase of $500,000 for the East Arts grants.
Yes, sir.
How did you come up with 500,000? Why not 400 or 600, or why 500?
The current allocation, I believe, is 1.038 million. So I believe a 50% increase would be 500,000. I know the budgets are tight. I just know that that 1.038 services over nearly 24 organizations. So an increase of about 500,000 would allow, new grantees to come in and also support the current funded grantees who are specifically serving the quadrants of Northeast and Southeast.
Thank you. Several of the witnesses testified about the 2% cap. This is a proposal from the mayor. I have to say that I'm, how do I want to put this? I'm not enthusiastic about this. I'm pretty sure that she did this to balance the financial plan in the out years, which is to say that for the council to reverse that, we're going to have to find other money to balance the financial plan. I'm not saying we can't, and it's something I certainly want to look at. But I want to be clear that this is a proposal from the mayor. And it's a proposal that she applies to several programs that are funded out of dedicated revenues. Yeah, another is there's dedicated funding for WMATA for infrastructure. I'm not so sure. I think there's several, and so WMATA and the commission are two, and I think there are a couple others. I'm not sure what they are, and but in any event, I'm kind of skeptical of it, but there's a cost to fixing that proposal from the mayor. Ms. Austin, in your testimony, you mentioned 3 unmet needs. Do you want to say more about the marketing campaign? What are your thoughts there?
I'd like it to be possible to do a marketing campaign that specifically targets going to theater, and or you could make that broader to other arts, live performing arts organizations. You know, there's plenty of evidence that there's a slow return to coming back to live performance. So marketing is one of the ways in which you can encourage people, provide messaging that is strong about all the opportunities there are to go to live performances. And it would be a way in which we can collaborate to do a campaign, you know, across organizations, so everyone can use those same messaging keys, which will make it stronger.
So do you see this as advertisements from, let's say, Arena Stage or Woolly Mammoth, or would this be advertisements from the Commission on the Arts and Humanities?
It would be more of a general campaign. I mean, so for example, Woolly Mammoth could take those same messages or key ideas and use it in their advertising dollars. So you generate a way in which across the market you are hearing and seeing the same campaign, but this would be generated by the commission with some oversight. You know, you need a strong contractor.
Still a little confused, but of course this is just an idea. So the commission would do the advertising, but would have some themes that then Woolly Mammoth or Arena or Shakespeare could pick up?
So I think you need funding, you know, you need some funding that are set aside. The commission would hire marketing consultant contractors who can execute the campaign, figure out what the key messages are, do some audience research so you know what will hit your markets. And then that contractor with support from CAH and people like myself would execute the campaign, you know, across channels, largely driven. You know, it would be a mixed campaign of both social, print, and, you know, other ways in which you can reach audiences. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm still just a little confused, but I realize it's a concept, but besides the commission, hiring a marketing firm to develop the campaign, would the commission do the advertising or just share the results of that campaign with the individual organizations and they would do the advertising?
There's an outside firms who will do the advertising, will execute it. The other thing I was trying to express is with marketing, what you can do is push down to the individual organizations so that they are using similar messages, so that you can use their reach as well. So it would be a collaborative effort across organizations, DCCAH, and outside marketing contractors.
Okay, I understand. And then you also indicated as a need supplemental operating support. So the commission provides operating support now. What are you thinking by that?
Well, that there needs to be more. I mean, the years that we're in, the next 2 to 3 years, there needs to be recovery money. We had some things like that during the period in which all the performance spaces were shut down, but there needs to be more. Like I said, DCCH provides generous funding, but we need more funding for general operating support because of the deficit problem that Rebecca mentioned, as well as there's a compromising of programming because there's not enough funds that used to come from the ticket revenue.
And then the other unmet need was transparent funding mechanism for the city to support larger capital projects, such as building purchases or renovations. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a need here. I see this as a long-term need, that it's never been easy or transparent or understood, like how to keep a capital funding projects going. There's ongoing needs. There's needs across lots of institutions, and those spaces are the spaces where the work happens and need better support. And there's a need for some new spaces. So there's need for capital funds for the spaces that exist, and there's need for new spaces. But there's no place where it's understood how much you can plan for, what you might receive, sort of, again, higher dollar amounts. That's what I'm imagining.
Thank you. I had one other question that was for Ms. Medrano. In your statement, you said, yet our CAH operating grant continues to decrease. Could you say more about that?
Yes, let me get my camera on. As you know, Chairman Mendelson, there was a restructuring of the distribution of funds for GOES. So we had been a part of a larger grant group, and that was changed so that smaller groups so that they could distribute the money more equitably. However, we've not been able to replace that money, and our program needs continue to grow. There was also some more discretionary funds. They had additional funds that were added on, amendments to the grants in the past. I don't believe, but the commission will know more about this, but I don't believe there will be those this year, the supplemental grants. So therefore, yes, there's a net loss in that. We also lost at the same time about $500,000 of other COVID emergency funds, including the shuttered venues, which benefited many groups. That's no longer there. There were monies from the DEMPED that during this time that are no longer there. I wanted to say one thing about Amy's testimony in terms of capital. You might remember, I remember because I've been here so long, the Redevelopment Land Agency used to have $1 a year buildings available downtown. And it seems to me with downtown being so empty, that there are a lot of empty spaces that could be made available to arts groups. And I know there are numerous art groups looking for space because I have to turn them away at Gala. We don't have enough space or time to do our programs and accommodate other groups. So I would just like to reinforce what Amy said. Thanks.
Thank you. I do not have any other questions for you. Give me just a second. Each of you are excused. Thank you very much for your testimony. And I got copies from everybody but Mr. Ha, and I think he said he was going to resend that. So you all are excused, and I'm going to turn now to the Chair of the Commission on Arts and Humanities, Reggie Van Lee, and the Interim Executive Director, David Markey.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and the council members. My name is Reggie Van Lee, Chair of the Commission on the Arts and Humanities. I'm an African-American man, and I'm wearing a blue suit, white shirt, and colorful tie. At the Commission, we describe ourselves when speaking in meetings for the benefit of our virtually impaired constituents in the spirit of equity and inclusion. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget for the Commission on the Arts and Humanities. On behalf of the Interim Director, David Markey, and myself, we acknowledge that we are on the ancestral homelands of the Nacotchtank, Anacostan, and Piscataway peoples, the first residents of what would become the District of Columbia. Before I proceed, I want to express my sincere appreciation to the Chairman and the rest of the Council for passing, and the Mayor for enacting the Commission on the Arts and Humanities Acting Executive Director Emergency Amendment Act. With the authority this legislation has provided to the Commission, our Executive Director nominee, Aaron Myers, will be in our office as the full-time Acting Executive Director beginning April 10th. I'm hopeful that the permanent version of this legislation will be enacted as well, enabling future commissions to appropriately manage transitions in agency leadership. In considering the FY23 budget for the Arts Commission, I want to reflect on one of our core constituencies, artists. Artists are some of the most resilient, resourceful, and fearless people in the world. The pandemic proved that. As we know, recent economic forecasts portend a decline in revenue for the district in the coming years, which is reflected in this proposed budget. The arts and cultural sector was among the hardest hit economically by the pandemic, and as predicted, it is one of the slowest sectors to recover. In spite of this, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that arts and cultural production accounts for over $13 billion and 9% of the District of Columbia's economy, contributing 54,961 jobs. These numbers are due in no small part to this government's investment in the arts and cultural sector through the Commission's grants program. I believe it's incumbent upon us as a government to continue to support the recovery of the arts and cultural community. Any reductions or loss of support to this sector would have a ripple effect throughout all of our other industries in the district. It would be a severe detriment to our residents. The budget for the Commission on the Arts and Humanities included in the Mayor's fiscal year 2024 budget proposal is over $50 million, the largest in the agency's history. As you know, Mr. Chairman, the Council passed legislation that established a dedicated tax, in this case, a percentage of the sales tax, to become the primary source of revenue for the Commission, thereby eliminating appropriations funding for the agency. Since dedicated tax funding began in FY 2019, we've seen the agency's budget increase annually. Throughout the pandemic, the Commission understood that sales tax revenues could decline, reducing the funding available for our budget and impacting the number of grants and the amount of funding we would be able to award. Thankfully, that has not been the case. Some may ask if the Arts Commission really needs $50 million to serve its mission and purpose, a question that could be asked by any government agency. Over 80% of our annual budget goes out the door as grant awards to DC resident artists and nonprofit organizations. As the Commission's budget has grown, we have subsequently increased the amount of many of our grants, as well as increasing the number of grants awarded and the number of first-time grantees. It's clear that these grants were needed, and for many individual artists and small organizations, these grants are critical. The Commission's budget is therefore an investment in the quality of life and economic activity for the district, providing both direct and indirect benefits to our residents. As always, we are committed to the thoughtful and responsible handling of our budget, guided by the principle of creating practices, behaviors, and a culture of fair and equitable processes to ensure robust, varied, and fully accessible resources to the broad community. In order to expand our framework of equity and access, I propose that a private 501c3 nonprofit organization be established to act as a kind of foundation for the Commission. This is an idea that I've discussed with you, Mr. Chairman, and with several other council members as well. And it's an idea that is not without precedent. 10 other state arts agencies have associated cultural trusts or foundations, as do several district government agencies, such as the DC Public Library Foundation and the DC Public Education Fund, for example. We believe that the establishment of such a foundation would create a mechanism for which funds could be made available for arts and cultural organizations that may not have a 501c3 or may lack the resources to effectively fundraise for themselves. Through the foundation, we aim to reach those groups the Commission, as a government agency bound by certain regulations, has been unable to effectively reach. Again, this is a matter of equity and access. We also envision such a foundation as being able to provide support for some of the agency's programs and special events, which in turn would free up our staff and allow them to be of better service to our constituents. An example of such programmatic support involves the future of the district's nighttime arts festival, Art All Night, which began in 2011 as a project of Shaw Main Streets with grant funding from the Commission and is now a citywide event. Last year's Art All Night featured 1,414 artists at 277 different locations throughout the district, welcoming over 180,000 attendees. And I commend the great work of our festival partners over the years, the Department of Small and Local Business Development, DC Public Library, and the participating Main Streets organizations and business improvement districts. We believe the time is right to take All Night to the next level by taking inspiration from well-known cultural events like Art Basel to elevate the programming and garner regional, national, and eventually international attention. As it currently exists, the festival is one project among many that the party and organizations work on over the course of a year. A commission foundation would take on the bulk of the work of planning and executing the festival, as well as soliciting additional private financial support. The dedicated focus and resources our foundation could bring to Art All Night is what is needed for it to become a truly signature event, not unlike the National Cherry Blossom Festival. As a result, the district would likely benefit economically with increased tourism, and our artistic community will have a platform with which to showcase and even sell their work to a global audience potentially. Such a foundation would be completely separate from the commission and would have its own board and staff. Our understanding is that legislation would be required for this to happen. And so I would respectfully request the council's assistance and collaboration to develop and pass such a bill. Chairman Mendelson, council members, you've proven to be stalwart supporters of the arts with a deep understanding of the benefits they bring. And I'm particularly grateful for that. I look forward to continuing the conversation on public funding of the arts in the District of Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Lee. Mr. Markey.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and council members. My name is David Markey. I am a white man wearing a burgundy jacket and a blue shirt. While my permanent position is that of the Deputy Director for the Commission on the Arts and Humanities, since August 2022, I have also served as the agency's interim director at the request of Chair Van Lee, and within which capacity I am before you today. The chair and I are also joined by our agency's resource allocation officer, Brian Allende, and the agency's finance officer, Dedeje Belay. Much of what is seen as value in the arts is implicit and not always obvious to those who are not directly engaged in their creation or consumption. We greatly appreciate the holistic understanding of the arts, Chairman Mendelson, and the ways in which they enrich the fabric of the city. CAH firmly believes in the arts and humanities as being fundamental rather than ornamental to the lives and well-being of the residents of the District of Columbia. As several of the witnesses stated, they have the ability to ensure that children and youth develop both cognitively and socio-emotionally as they navigate their journey to adulthood. They can provide a sense of community, purpose, and joy to older adults who oftentimes face the risk of disconnectedness. And for those of us in the in-between years, the arts and humanities hold a mirror up to nature, oftentimes reflecting the world back to us in the hopes of making us a more informed and engaged citizenry. The arts and culture sector also has a significant direct and indirect impact on the economy. Our chair referenced the sector's footprint on the city's finances. Nationally, that figure is 4.2% of GDP. So the city is way ahead of all of our neighboring states in the impact the arts have on the local economy. That 4.2% figure is greater than that of agriculture, transportation, or utilities. So whether locally or nationally, the contributions of the sector on the economy are far from insignificant. We have just passed the 3-year mark of the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. In many ways, we are only now feeling the true social and economic fallout of that time. COVID whiplash, as it were. As was stated, emergency funding from the federal government is no more. Private funders are reassessing their portfolios as they navigate decreases in investment income, and telework policies continue to keep large numbers of people at home, both during work hours and in the evenings. These are all issues that continue to impact the arts and humanities ecosystem in the city. As the district continues to return to some sense of normalcy and shifts its focus from relief to recovery, much of our sector faces ongoing challenges. CAH's recent study on the economic and social impacts of COVID-19 on the district's arts and culture sector confirms our understanding that audiences have not yet returned to pre-pandemic audience attendance levels. Additionally, many productions continue to be forced to shorten or cancel planned engagements because of illnesses caused by new waves of infection. New challenges have also emerged, including those of rising supply costs, labor shortages, and emotional fatigue. All of these hurdles continue to overly burden our industry and have significant impacts on the local economy. As CAH moved through the planning and refinement stages of the budget process for FY24, we kept all of these factors in view. The budget was crafted with 3 key strands in mind. The first was to continue to provide consistent funding to organizations and individuals to ensure an economic baseline, sense of stability, and impetus for growth. While legislation mandates that at least 78% of the agency's budget is dedicated to grant making, we have been successful in utilizing between 83 and 85% of our grant making budget, for grant making over the past 3 years. Moving into the next fiscal year, our commitment is to issue at minimum 82% of our budget in grants. This should add at least $2.5 million to our general operating support grant and $800,000 to our facilities and buildings grant programs. The second strand is to ensure that the agency has the ability to continue its commitment to, quote, leadership beyond grant making, and engage in gap analyses to provide additional supports in the form of capacity building. Chair Van Lee has also spoken to some components of this in his testimony. And the third strand is that CAH has the appropriate internal administrative structure to ensure agency success. Adding to both grants and outreach personnel will afford us the opportunity to create deeper and more substantive partnerships with our applicants and grantees, and ensure our community has the support it needs in our grant-making processes and wraparound services. As the dual public health and social justice pandemics of 2020 developed, CAH adopted a posture of respect and response. That is, being respectful of what was unfolding and responding with as much grace as was possible to the immediate needs of the community. We did our best to have their backs. Today, CAH has both the opportunity and the obligation to continue that posture and to accelerate forward momentum through times that still hold much uncertainty. I'd like to close by thanking you, Chairman Mendelson, the other members of the council, and Mayor Bowser and her administration. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I'm getting a note to remind folks, because there's some who are watching and I guess are in the waiting room, that when we are done with this hearing on the budget, I will adjourn and then I'll start the next hearing, which will be on the proposed executive director as well as the permanent legislation regarding the appointment of the executive director. So that hearing will follow. Thank you, each of you, for your testimony. I do have some questions. Well, the first one I think was answered, and that is what percentage of the budget will go to administration? And your answer was what, 82% is going to be grants? That means 18% will go to,
Correct.
and you're pretty confident you'll be able to stick to that.
Yes, our hope would, as I said, a minimum of 82% would go out the door as grants.
But your budget does propose 12 new staff positions?
Correct. Yes,
And-
amounting to approximately $1.2 million, the budget.
How are you able to limit administrative costs to 18% and hire 12 new positions?
Well, in part, the budget variance from the current year to FY24 has an increase of almost $6 million to it, most of which is coming from the fund balance. We're making use of that. So that's allowed us to increase the size of the staff at the same time building in more funding for grant programs and then other non-personnel related administrative costs.
Now, using the fund balance is what I call one-time money. That sounds horrible. I don't mean it as horrible, but if you have 10 million in fund balance and you use 6 of it, you don't have 10 million next year to use 6. That 6 can only be used once. So if you're increasing staff, in part because you are using fund balance, how do you sustain that staff?
We're looking at FY24 and FY25, and we believe that we have enough monies in the fund balance to sustain both the increases to grants and personnel. You mentioned the cap or the proposed cap on our dedicated tax revenue. At the moment, projections are showing an increase over the next several years in dedicated tax revenue. So part of that revenue would help minimize the amount of money we would need to pull from the fund balance. There are also additional sources that of income that populate the fund balance. It's not all dedicated tax revenue. So there's delinquent debt, source of delinquent debt funds that also goes into that fund balance.
So the general sales tax, looking at the proposed budget and financial plan, is going up slightly for FY24, 43 million. Did I say that right? The dedicated sales tax is going up slightly to 43,721,000. And then it's going up by 1.6 million the following year in 25, fiscal year 25, to 45,339,000. Then the following year, it's going up. This is hard. I have to do this math. Going up almost 2 million to 47,242,000. So it looks like it's going up 2 million a year. And that plus the fund balance is how you can sustain these new hires through the financial plan.
Correct. And then there will be some savings on the non-personal administrative line too. We currently have a contract with a temporary personnel company, and we have 3 contracted folks. So we would sunset that contract.
I was gonna make that point. We do have these temporary contracts that we're gonna eliminate. And as we move out some of those contractors, we move in the full-time people. So it's to some extent a trade-off.
Give me a second here. So the 12 positions you're looking to add, one would be IT, because you don't have any IT?
We currently do not. We have support from the Office of Computer Technology, but what we found is that we need our own IT support person for all of the programming we do, as well as helping us better understand when we need to upgrade hardware, software, that type of thing.
2 new communication staff. So do you have any communication staff people now?
We do, yes. Part of the is it the community outreach that you're referencing, or communications themselves? That maybe we have one community outreach position. We're actually creating a second one that's more internal facing, i.e. To build out the relationships and the support that we offer to our current grantee pool, and then a second one who is more outwardly facing, helping us reach new audiences or potential applicants, grantees, that type of thing. So it would be a 2-member team that would fall under the communications and marketing department.
And I'll just add that coming out of the study we did on equity and inclusion and belonging, part of the challenge was either people were not aware of the agency and the ability to get funding through them, or they felt as though we weren't coming to them in the right sort of way. So we're adding these outreach positions so that we can go to the community as opposed to them having to necessarily come to us.
Okay. You currently have 1 and you'd be adding 2 more.
One additional one is in the outreach, with an outreach focus. And then in the marketing communications department we'd be adding somebody who is more experienced in public relations and marketing to add to the team, to build out that particular team.
Two new performance management staff.
Sorry, excuse me 1 second. The names are
What are you trying to do?
so we're adding several. There's 5 positions being added to the grants and public art departments. Again, in 2018, we engaged with the Center for Effective Philanthropy on a study, and at the time we discovered that our grants management specialists had portfolios that were much larger than they should have. And so since that time, we've been trying to reduce the size of each grant manager's portfolio, again, so that they can have more time to engage in a deeper, more meaningful way with grantees. But at the same time, our budget was growing and we were receiving a greater number of applications and in turn, a greater number of grantees. So it's been difficult for us to sort of put a cap on the number of grants each grant manager manages. And so by adding these grant management specialists, it should help us to do that.
So was confused and I hope no longer. The notes I'm looking at are based on table 4. And so I'm looking at line 1090 and that says performance management. And so that's why I said performance management.
Exactly. And my notes say the net increase is based on the addition of 1 new FTE. This is our diversity and inclusion officer, which does not currently exist, and 1 existing chief of staff position that was reclassified from a communications classification. But that's the net 2 are from the diversity inclusion officer and reclassified the chief of staff position.
That's for performance management.
That's under the category of performance management. On table 4, line 1090, activity 1090.
So where are these additional grants managers? You know, show up on the next page. Under line 5010.
Yes. Unfortunately, the activity titles oftentimes don't match the actual departments at the agency.
The title says legislative and grants management, and I was kind of struck by the legislative. Is it actually a legislative person or grants managers?
No, they are all grants management people.
With respect to grants management, and for the last couple of years, the commission, as I understand it, has pretty much funded every grant applicant. Is it the intent to continue to do that or to introduce merit in the grants?
So a merit is still a criterion in our grant processes with the relief grant programs that we've pushed out over the past 3 years. It's sort of been a sort of a pass-fail, more of an eligibility criteria rather than a merit criteria. The commission has made a commitment to funding all eligible applicants for the general operating support grant program, and that's a pot of applicants that increases every year. Last year we had 145 grantees. This year we have 159, and we have 173 applicants for the FY24 cohort. With most of the other grants, facilities and buildings, and the grant programs that fall under the arts and humanities, or in the arts and humanities bucket, which is the fellowship grant for individual artists, and the majority of our project-based grants, they are competitive. There's a merit component to them, and we fund between 2/3 and 3/4 of the applicants, but not all of them.
Which one is that for again?
So that's for the arts and humanities bucket, which is the 25% pot. That includes the fellowship program for individual artists, and then various project-based grants, such as the Arts Education Grant, the Field Trip Grant, the East Arts Grant that Mr. Jones spoke to. So we fund between 2/3 and 3/4 of those applicants each year.
And I'll add that even in GOS, it's always an explicit decision with each of the grants committee meetings to either fund everybody or fund a subset. So because of the situation we're in now, we've chosen in the last year to fund everyone, but it is not automatic. It's not rubber stamp. We have a conversation each time to decide that. We look at the options and then make the decision. It ends up, we funded everybody so far, but that's not necessarily always going to happen.
I think we covered this already, but I just want to be sure. Concerning the dedicated taxes in your revenue. So we show that the revenue, sales tax revenue is going to the commission will be 43,721,000. Your budget is for almost 51 million. Did I say thousand? I meant million. I'll start over. The revenue table in volume 1 says that the dedicated funds are 43,721,000. Your budget is just under 51 million. That difference is
the fund balance.
Fund balance. And why do you have so much fund balance? You have about 10 million right now?
Correct. Rebecca from Gala mentioned enhancements. And so we push the majority of our grant awards out the door at the beginning of the fiscal year before we've accrued dedicated tax revenue. Partway through the year, around this time, coming into April, we'll have a better sense of how we've performed with dedicated tax revenue for the first 6 months. And then we'll make a decision on what sort of enhancements we might be able to make. So are there funds remaining, grant funds remaining that we can issue enhancements using those funds? Similarly, there are oftentimes savings in payroll. We were without an executive director and a general counsel for a large swath of the past year, which has led us to have some personnel savings. And then there are oftentimes contracts in the non-personnel line that we know that we're not going to realize in the next 6 months. So we're able to take those monies and issue them in enhancements. Last year, we try to push as much money out the door as was possible in the second half of the year. But there comes a time when we have to make a decision to not to do that, because there's the whole sort of processing piece and payment piece, and we have to make sure that we don't run out of year and are not able to pay grantees. So last year, our hope was to push approximately $13 million out in a second wave of funding, but we were only able to push $9 million of additional funding out the door. So the balance went back into the fund balance to use or to add to what was there. So oftentimes it's an accumulation from year to year. Sometimes we don't know until later in the year that we have accrued dollars through delinquent tax revenue, those types of things. And that's why we end up having monies in the fund balance.
I was going to make the delinquent tax point, but also the forecast versus actual revenues that come in when there's a delta there to our advantage, that goes into the fund balance as well.
Okay.
In some ways, it's our rainy day fund that should dedicate to tax revenue, take a dip, that we have monies to draw from to, again, to create some sort of stability for the community.
Do you have in your budget, have you built in any salary lapse?
No, we haven't.
Salary
lapse.
And what's your fringe rate? CFOs love it when I ask this question. It gives them something.
Agency Fiscal Officer. So our fringe rate is 23.6%.
23.6%. And zero salary lapse. Mr. Van Lee, earlier this year when we met, you laid out your idea for the endowment fund and
the foundation, you mean?
Foundation, yeah. And then you spoke to it in your testimony. These are my notes. Have you fleshed this proposal out yet? I understand you reached out to my office to see that status, but I think we cannot do anything until you further develop the idea.
Yes, that is in process. We're looking at other places where these foundations have existed, lessons learned, how do we prosecute it in places where it's done in DC as well. So we're almost prepared to come with a proposal to you that would be legislated appropriate. We're almost there.
Okay, I'm going to write down almost prepared.
Yes. And also when we spoke to you, we talked about our intention to have a stakeholders meeting with our constituents to talk about this. And we want to wait until we get that feedback as well. And that meeting is probably going to happen towards the end of May.
The feedback.
The feedback session
will be in May.
In May. We didn't want to move forward without having that feedback from our constituents.
We've discussed the need for large capital grants in excess of $1 million for some of our larger arts organizations. These are non-recurring needs that all large organizations request and cycles over the years. Have you made any progress in developing a proposal whereby the commission can support these large competitive requests?
That's aligned with the other promise of coming to you on more about the foundation. We're working through it. Again, we'd like to have some input from the constituents, so it's part of that meeting as well.
The budget anticipates $861,000 in federal grant funds, which is for a $400,000 increase over our pre-COVID FY21 budget. In FY22, you received over $2 million in federal grant funds. There are a couple of questions. One is, why did the grants go up dramatically in FY21 and 22? I'm guessing at an answer, but I want to hear yours. And then, are you aware of any other federal grant money that may be available? And the $400,000 increase, is that from the National Endowment?
So the answer to your first question about the $2 million that we expended in FY22, that was an accumulation of CARES funds and American Rescue Plan funds, as well as our standing annual NEA grant. We utilize a small part of that grant for staff. 2 staff members. It partially underwrites their salaries, but the majority of the funds are added to the grant program dollars and utilized for that purpose.
That's the CARES and ARPA funds
CARES and ARPA.
in 21 and 22. What's the $400,000 increase for next year?
So the NEA increased our award by $58,000 for next year, correct?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson,
Yeah.
members of the council, Mayor Bowser. My name is Brian Allende. I'm an Afro-Latino male appearing before you today in a blue suit, white shirt, and blue tie. The answer to the question as it pertains to the $400,000 is that funding there is no increase in the NEA funding. The NEA funding is $860,000. The $400,000 that you're referring to is funding that should have been appropriated in the art bank activity.
It should have been appropriated where?
In the art bank activity, which is part of the neighborhood arts cohort, the 25% part.
Sometimes I have to understand my question. Okay, so I'm looking at table 2, federal resources. In FY21, you got 262,000. In FY22, you got 2,031,000. That $2 million reflected the CARES and ARPA funds, correct?
Yes, the CARES, ARPA, and then also inclusive of our regular NEA grant, or the majority of the funds from our annual NEA grant.
Okay, and then in FY23, the current year and next year, it's 800,000, well, 861,000 next year. Why did it go from 262 in FY21 to 800 in FY23? That's just NEAs increased by that much? Which is a beautiful thing, but that's
It's a beautiful thing,
but that's what that
As it
is.
pertains to the actual spending, because the federal grant during the COVID pandemic, the NEA had extended the grant award period. It's generally 1 year from October 1st to September 30th. But during the pandemic, each partnership grant that we were receiving from the NEA expired September 31st of 22. So therefore, the column that says 262 reflects the actual spending, but we were allowed to add the remaining funding into the actual funding for fiscal year 22.
22, but I'm asking about 23, which is 800,000, and 24, which is 861,000.
Right. And so the funding for fiscal year 23 represents the partnership grant award for fiscal year 23.
Of 800,000.
That's correct.
Yeah, my question is, why is it 800,000 when before the pandemic it was 200,000?
And as I was explaining, the grants that we received in fiscal year 20 and 21, the grant award periods were extended through the end of September of 22. That column there, 262,000, only reflects the amount that we spent in that fiscal year. Any funding that was not spent during that fiscal year is therefore carried over into the next fiscal year.
All right, so what does that mean for FY25?
So from fiscal year 23 and beyond, unless there is another federal appropriation or emergency funding, the funding will be approximately $860,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood from the NEA.
So your testimony is that going forward, it will continue to be 860,000, roughly.
Traditionally, over the last 3 years, the federal grant, the partnership award has increased roughly $40,000 per year.
And so if that's the case, then in FY25, it would be 900,000.
It's hard to, it's an assumption at this point.
Correct.
When we actually do the budget, we do it based off of the current year's award letter. So right now, our current award is 861,000 for 23. It could conceivably be 900,000 for 24.
Is there any other federal grant money that's available to you all?
And we received a small grant last year. It was a private foundation through the federal government for the Create and Thrive program, which was a program for older adults. And so we're in the second year of that program, but it's a small award. It's $20,000+.
Give me just a moment. At this time, I don't have any other questions. I don't think there was anything I asked you to get back to us on, other than that at some point we'll see foundation language and.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I don't know how many of you are sticking around, but remember we have a hearing in a couple minutes. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. This is going to conclude this hearing. And this hearing has been on the mayor's proposed fiscal year 2024 budgets for the University of the District of Columbia and the Commission on Arts and Humanities. Our next hearing on the proposed budget will be on Tuesday, April 4th. Nope, I misspoke. On Wednesday, April 5th, where we will hear testimony from non-government public witnesses regarding all of the education agencies. I will start the next hearing in maybe 5 minutes. The time is 12:49 and this hearing is adjourned.